This fanfic ended at chapter 13. It hasn't been updated in a while. Anyways, I did not make this fanfic. Support the author in the link below. No longer human. By Nehiru. Flesh blood dripping off from his fangs, his nails digging to the other's skin. The clear image of his prey's lifeless body, stained with blood. And his mind wanting more, as a weird satisfaction takes over. He really needs to stop. Or, Midoriya Izuku is a product of Sensei's Namu experiments, which cause him to turn into a demon. He manages to escape after the breaking point, and decides that it is better for everybody if he is just dead. But some people do not think like that. Chapter 1. I cannot die, yet. Notes. So, around 1 Dr. Stone and 3 My Hero Academia fanfic ideas, I have decided to start with the longest one. And there is also some one-shot ideas, but whatever, I hope you guys enjoy this. Also I want to say, the title of the fanfic, No Longer Human, is inspired from a book of Dazai Osamu. No, I have not read it, but I watched Bungo Stray Dogs, and I thought it would suit this fika. English is not my native language, feel free to correct my mistakes. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Okay, this should work. The boy mumbled as he slid his fingers on the blade's smooth and sharp side. His finger started to bleed with the cut, but it did not last long. The boy sighed to the side of his finger, which was completely healed, that the only evidence of the cut was the red liquid still on the blade. It was lasting too short to heal. And the boy has not eaten anything for the last 3 days. He has supposed to be weak because of that. But the night's darkness only was giving him power. He cursed all the quirks he got forced to have. Healing, healing and more healing, which caused him to have immortality. Well, almost. He still had a weak spot that could end his life. The boy touched his neck slightly, feeling the thinner skin. But it was not going to last long to get it thicker again. Thanks to his healing, of course. He lowered his gaze to the ground from his neck, realizing his collar was soaked red with his blood that poured from his neck, while he tried to cut the skin. He stared at knives, blades, scissors tossed to ground. They shined slightly, reflecting the star's light. They all were covered in blood, maybe some skin. It was probably a disgusting view to almost everybody. But not to him. He was not proud of that. Flesh, blood and skin, he could feel drools dripping off from his fangs. God, he was so hungry. He lifted the blade to his neck, gulping as he closed his eyes to not see the red liquid again. However, he could still smell it, feel it, all his senses screaming. He was so disgusting. He knew it had no use. His own blood or body could not feed him. But still he was desperate for it. Like a demon, his Nai-san whispered to the boy, who has pinned the older boy to the ground, drools and blood, his Nai-san's blood, pouring down from his mouth as he hissed. The boy swung the blade with a sudden move to cut his head off. He groaned with pain as the cold blade digged into his neck. He fell to his knees, his grip on the blade getting thicker, his knuckles getting white. He was feeling all the pain. If they just gave him something to not feel the pain instead of healing quirks, he could have just finished it in a second. But that was nothing compared to all the pain he caused to others. He has deserved it. His every breath, his every move was costing to big prizes. So he just needed to finish it already. The blade was not even halfway through. He clenched his teeth, his hands shaking. Why does not it work? He glared at other sharp objects with teary eyes. Some of them were so short, some of them were not just sharp enough. But this one was perfect. He was sure. But still, he just could not move the blade anymore. He grunted and pushed it harder. Come on, please. He sobbed. He could feel his neck healing slowly again. He needed to be faster. Maybe it was because he did not have enough power. Maybe he should have eaten something first. He immediately shrugged off that thought. Maybe because it was the night. He was weaker with sunlight, but trying to cut off his head while people were outside in the morning did not sound wiseful. He closed his eyes and tried again. Dude. Sensei's voice echoed through the street, making the little boy shiver with fear. This is a completely normal thing to do, Izuku. People should eat when they are hungry. Not if that food is a person. Izuku thought, feeling sick with the sight of a random man chained to a wall. You're old enough to understand this, Izuku. You have turned to 8 yesterday. He added, eyeballing the green-haired boy. The boy's green eyes was teary. The man sighed and put his hand to the boy's shoulder, which caused him to flinch. Sensei cut the chained man's cheek slightly with a sudden move. The boy's emerald eyes whitened with a familiar yet unwelcome feeling. Tears flowed on his freckled cheeks like he knew what was exactly going to happen next. The green-haired boy's body tensed, his mind stopping thinking. He stepped front with his eyes locked to the chained, unconscious man. The little boy licked his lips, feeling his fangs getting longer. He stared chained man's blood rolling down on his cheek. Blood slowly made its way to the man's chin. It dripped to the ground. The boy jumped to the man, his long and sharp nails digging into man's shoulders, just like how his fangs dig to man's neck. Sensei smirked from the back, watching the little boy hunting his prey, satisfied. The boy dropped the bloody blade to the ground, next to other ones. He gripped his neck softly as he breathed deeply, his eyes whitening with tears. He could feel the blood leaking from his neck, flowing through his hands. He could also the slits slowly closing. I can't. The bleeding stopped, leaving his neck with no scars. How many people died for this? He could almost see his praise, looking at him with pure terror as their blood splashed to everywhere with his nails gripping them. He could almost hear them screaming as he bit their neck. He could almost. Some of them were conscious, some of them were not. Some of them had families, some of them were just some punks. Some of them were women, some of them man. Some of them were kids, some of them were old people. He has not sorted them. It was enough if they were simply human. He stood up, wiping his tear from his freckled cheek. He suddenly flinched with a sudden burning feeling on his skin. The sun was rising. He cursed under his breath as he hurried to take all the sharp things from the ground. Some of them grazed his skin, but it immediately healed. He dumped all of them to trash and covered himself with a cloak that he found nearby. Sunlight was leaving him weaker. It was just a side effect of the experiments that have been done on him. Sunlight used to be more damaging on him, but after some other experiments, now it was just making him weaker and burning his skin. It was enough if he just escaped from the sun at noon. He passed through the streets pensively. There were still no people outside, but it would not be a problem if they were either. People just would think him as a classic drunk or homeless passing by. He covered the cloak around him more, lowering his gaze to the ground. He could not do it. Not now, not tomorrow. He will never be able to do that. Not while he hears his praise screams every time he closes his eyes. Not while the metallic taste of human blood do not vanish from his mouth. Not while he does not pay for the things he has done. He sighed. Then what? What was he supposed to do? He could not bring people back to life. He could not use his healing on other people. A certain sense got him out of his thoughts. The prey, someone probably bleeding and weak right now. His senses screamed as he glared around to see it. His stomach rumbled when he took notice of a skinny blonde man with large clothes for him, laying alone on the ground, blood dripping off from his abdomen. Notes. Here goes the first chapter, I would be so happy if you leave kudos and comment your thoughts. I will probably update once a week or twice a week. Until then. Chapter 2. The starting point. Notes. This took longer than I accepted. I was not at home so I could not edit it. But here it is, longer than the previous one. Also, thanks for all your comments and kudos, they really motivate me. See the end of the chapter for more notes. 3 days. 3 days since he has eaten something. That something was not a big meal. To think, finding someone bleeding already and while nobody is around, it was a golden opportunity. At least it was what his first thought as a demon. He found himself faltering over the man. His pupils got darker and bigger as he locked his gaze to the red liquid. His jaw got stretched tight, his body getting tense to hunt. You still have not paid for the people you already have killed, and you still dare to attack that man. He mentally slapped himself. He was already starving himself for a while. He just needed to hold a bit more, and more, until he is finally in peace and ready to kill himself. Also, it can be a good chance to start, he thought. He could start with saving this man's life, so he would clear one person's blood from his hands, even if it was just one in a lot, it was a beginning. The green-haired boy dragged him to shadow of a tree first. Blood was left behind on the road that he dragged the man. Do not look at it, do not look at it, do not smell it, do not want it, do not. He found a chance to examine the man more. He was a very skinny man with sharp angular features and long limbs, his neck long and his eyebrows absent. He slowly lifted the man's oversized shirt and saw a nasty scar along his abdomen, blood leaking from it, dyeing the man's normally white shirt red. His gaze met with his own hands which also got red with. Thirsty, thirsty, thirsty. He suddenly got up, looking anywhere else from the red liquid. He shook his head firmly, trying to keep himself together. I cannot continue like this. What do I do? What? His emerald eyes took notice of the tree's thin branch. He broke a piece of the branch immediately, and tucked it to his mouth. He mentally congratulated himself for this geniusness as his fangs digged into the wood. He leaned into the man again, feeling uncomfortable of the taste in his mouth. Wood did not taste good, he was saying it as someone who eats flesh and blood. But continued anyway. Fortunately, it was working. He was not professional at treating wounds as someone who always heals on his own, but he was proud of his work in the end. The bleeding had stopped and he had bandaged the wound with a piece of his cloak. He immediately took some step back and spit the wood to ground. A disgusting taste was left on his mouth. But the man was no bleeding anymore so he could control himself. But the blood left on his own hands looked so appetizing. He breathed out and in deeply. No, he said himself again and again as he lifted his gaze up to not see the blood, his hands shaking. But the man is still living and you cannot give the blood on your hands back to him, right? You will need to wash them away anyway, so why not just? He did not think more. He slowly licked the red liquid left, an ion still on the unconscious man. It was not much but so sweet. It has been days. The man started to move uncomfortably. He immediately stopped and fixed himself, a panic taking over. What do I do? Should I go? What if he asks something? Or should I wait until I be sure that he is safe? Can he realize that I am? The skinny man opened his blue eyes slowly, his gaze meeting with him. Another panic took over. Was he looking suspicious? He had fangs and long nails, but it was not that obvious right now, so it would not be a problem, right? Wait, what about the patterns on his body? They were pale but still, an X on the middle of his face, from his cheek to his forehead, and really dark green lines covering his arms. But he could explain it just by saying he has a transformation quirk, right? The skinny man slowly got up, acting like bleeding out of nowhere was something usual. Looking at the nasty scar he has, it was probably usual. Are you alright, sir? The green-eyed boy asked. He just wanted to get this done and get away as soon as possible. The man opened his mouth to answer but only coughed blood. The boy took some step back immediately with a familiar urge which probably seemed like he freaked out from him coughing blood. The man wiped his mouth and exhaled deeply. Yes, he answered, smiling brightly. Thanks to you, young man. He thanked me. The warmness covered the demon boy's body, making him almost tear up. I did something good. No problem. He blurted out, cannot preventing a big smile forming on his face. He weirdly stayed there until he realized the man was looking at him curiously. Well, goodbye, sir. He mumbled, turning to other side. And see something like slime growing. A weak man and a child, you can be good cover, and I am sure we can get this man's work done easily. Everything happened in a heartbeat. The slime thing attacked to the green-haired boy, the cloak covering him slipping away from his fingers. Just my luck. He thought as the smile covered his body, even his mouth, and leaving him breathless, not like he would die from it. He tried to grab the slime, but even his sharp nails did not work. He struggled to get free, the slime thing's voice echoing in his ears. Just hold on a bit more and it will be over. He tried to look at the man to see if he was safe or doing something reckless to save him. He would have accepted pretty much anything, the man calling the police, trying to throw something or screaming for help. But suddenly his body getting buff as he turned into a familiar face with a famous smile and throw a fist at the villain, yelling smash. No, he really was not accepting that. He suddenly found himself floating among smile patterns. He slowly opened his eyes and see the number one hero. Then he fell to the ground. It was not a big deal, of course, but the sunlight almost at noon, how in the earth he lost the track of time. With nothing to cover him up. He subconsciously shrank on the ground, trying to cover himself up with his hands, his skin burning. Increase it. Sensei ordered behind the glass with the doctor with him. Doctor looked at the buttons and systems in front of him. Are you sure? This looks like his limit. Sensei smirked. That is not right, Izuku? I just gave you another healing quirk from a hero's sidekick. You sure can continue, right? He yelled, knocking the glass. In the other side of the glass wall, Izuku laid on the ground, shrank to himself and trying to prevent the light from his skin. But it had no use, with the fact that he was just on his underwear and the artificial sunlight coming from everywhere. Doctor turned the control button more. Izuku screamed. The burning feeling on his skin, on his body, he wanted to peel his skin off. He tried to cover himself up. It started to get dark, and Izuku thought that he was about to pass out. But the burning feeling slowly faded, a soreness taking its place. He slowly got his arm in front of his head and lifted his gaze up. He saw the blonde man, the number one hero, preventing the sunlight with his cloak. Somebody is not very good with sunlight, it seems. He said, smiling slightly. He gripped the cloak even tighter, like it can slip from his fingers any moment. The number one has brought him to the shadow of the tree. They were just sitting there. Izuku could sense Hiro's eyes on his burned red-brown skin, slowly getting back to his normal shape. You are all might, he stated as he poked his burned cheek and flinched. He covered it with his hand uneasily. That is a secret, young man. You cannot say it to your friends or write it online even by accident. He warned as an answer. The freckled boy nodded. It is not like he had someone to tell. How did it happen? The man sighed, a sudden wind rushing through his front bangs. A villain fight nearly 6 years ago. He answered. It did not show up on news though. I did not let it. As you see, sometimes I act reckless and it bleeds. He shivered. Nearly 6 years. It must be a very serious villain if it was able to damage the number one that much, he thought. Izuku was not guessing Sensei's sudden disappearance by exactly that time was a coincidence. Izuku had a good memory, since he has become a demon. He remembers everything since he was 6, since he was with Sensei. Before he was 6 was only darkness though. Being a hero must be really hard. He mumbled, not taking his gaze from the horizon. But it is worth it. The number one answered in a beat. I am ready to sacrifice if it is to save even a life. Sacrifice to save others' lives. A crazy idea appeared in Izuku's mind. You saved a lot of people, right? He asked blankly. The number one hero turned to him with a questioning look against this obvious question. Maybe, I can also, he stuttered excitedly as he turned to the number one, I can also save lives. All Might still seemed a bit surprised but answered smiling, "Why do not try out for the UA entrance exams, which is 4 months after?" Izuku got up, still holding the cloak. "Of course, how come I did not think of that earlier? Heroes save lives. Can there be a better way for me to pay for the deaths I cause? I do not have to be the best or on the spotlight, even graduate. I should just save people until I am satisfied, which is very easy with the fact that I am nearly immortal." The number 1 hero stared at the boy from behind as he seemed lost in thoughts. He seemed excited and there was a crazy look on his face that Toshinori just could not understand. But his quirk, his weird attitude and all, he was interested in that boy. Notes. About the patterns on Izuku's body, I always have found the patterns on demons and demonslayers so cool. Guess what is also cool? The red glowing lines on Izuku's body when he activates one for all full calling. So you're welcome, I combined them. Also Izuku with a stick on his mouth, Nezuko reference. Yes. Bye until the other chapter. Chapter 3. Finally and mindlessly, making it. Notes. I kinda tried another style. I usually leave bigger gaps between paragraphs, but it is smaller now. I am not sure how I should continue about this, feel free to leave out thoughts. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Izuku has not seen that much people all together before. He was at UA, gathered to a place where President Mick explained how will the exam going to happen, with all other people who wanted to get accepted. And there were a lot. Izuku always has stayed at a small hideout with the doctor, mostly Sensei would also be there, if he was not busy with some things that Izuku does not want to know but can guess. So only people he interacted with since he was 6 was just them and Nai-chan. Nai-chan also used to always be there for him. He uncomfortably gulped as he felt someone looking at him. He was mostly called plain looking, but the patterns on his body and his fangs, he has thought he would get attention, however everybody was just thinking about the exam, fortunately. Still, Izuku could feel someone's red eyes with spiky blonde hair strangely on him. "How did the written exam go, everyone?" a loud voice suddenly yelled. With a smirk on his face, President Mick was finally there. "The written exam has gone decent for the freckled boy. He has studied about it for the last 4 months, and thankfully he was a quick learner. Sensei sometimes used to tell that was one of the reasons he has selected Izuku, so not very thankfully. He has also worked in a job for a while, to buy some clothes that could protect him from the sun along the day. And that was easy, he worked for some night jobs, usually cleaning some clubs after everybody is gone until the morning, which was not a problem due to the fact that he did not need to sleep. Another side effect of being a demon. So here he was, wearing a long-sleeved and turtleneck clothing, a pair of gloves, dark green pantalon with a black cat. He looked like it was middle of winter, but he would rather burning from the temperature than burning his skin from sunlight. The freckled boy prayed for nobody to do not suddenly start bleeding in some way through President Mick's speech. In the end, he just had to crash some robots to gain points, and stay away from the 0-pointer. He made his way to the gate he is assigned for the exam. Thankfully, that spiky-haired guy was assigned to another gate. His green eyes met with his red ones while they separated ways one last time. Izuku wished it was not recognition he saw on his eyes. Izuku did not think it was a wise choice for an entrance exam, as he smashed some 3-pointers. It was almost all about physical power. You probably would not have a chance if you did not have a quirk that can break things. Izuku has seen various kind of quirk in his time with Sensei, and he could count at least 10 quirks that can be more useful, but cannot get even 1 point in this exam. But all quirks had some advantages, and it probably would be hard to select specifically. Also it was a matter of using the quirk wisely. He smashed another 2-pointer, leaving his hand covered in blood. Thankfully it was not that obvious on dark gloves. He ran to another one as it healed. Of course he did not just have healing. He was a weapon for Sensei, so he also had some quirks to make him faster and stronger, and they could develop by training. The trainings. The freckled boy did not even want to remember it, but has he ever forgotten? The times he got crashed to the wall, gasping with pain as his ribs broke, how he fell to the ground then, how the mindless Naomu grabbed him from his foot. Not leaving him any second to heal and throwing him to the another side of the room, Sensei's voice echoing in his ears as he floated on the air. "Is that all you got, Izuku? He has no mind. Is this why I have selected you?" Izuku did not even remember one time he has beaten one of them. But the trainings never stopped. Sensei could not give him the quirks he has given to Naomus. He did not want Izuku to be mindless too. Izuku supposed to be special. How Nai-chan runs up to him secretly after Sensei leaves, the tears flowing from his freckled cheeks, as he held on to his Nai-chan tightly while he slowly healed. "It is only needed," Nai-chan would whisper. The freckled boy stopped after he smashed another 1-pointer. He looked around a bit to see others, panting a bit. That must be enough to get in. He mumbled as he wiped away the blood left on his hand. He did not want to be the best at something, it was enough if he just get accepted in the last place. He was already could feel a guilt groaning inside him because of the fact that he was preventing one person's dream to get in by himself getting in. But he had no other choice, maybe someone could replace him after he dies. A loud crash and some people yelling interrupted his thoughts. His emerald eyes met with the scene of people running towards the same direction, passing Izuku's sides. Oh? He murmured to the side of a zero-pointer in front of him. Oh? He yelled to the side of a huge rock in the air, floating to right towards him. He barely dodged to the rock which caused by the zero-pointer. Is not that a bit extreme for an exam? He yelled internally. He lifted his head to the sky to see if there was any other falling down. The answer was yes, but it was not directed to him this time. He started to run to the girl with brown hair who looked like she was about to throw up. He thanked to the speed quirks he was forced to have, which was really rare. The girl saw him in the last second, her eyes getting widen as they met with the rock. The green-haired boy pushed the girl with his last boost. And he was not going to lie, he did not try to dodge after being sure that the girl was safe. Yeah, Yue, this is a bit extreme. He hissed with the pain of his arm getting crushed under the pressure. He slowly turned to the girl, biting his lip. She looked terrified to the sight, as it accepted. I got this, you can go and earn more points. He tried to say casually, trying to not flinch with the pain of his arm getting crushed again and again after it heals a bit. The girl suddenly shook his head, his brown bangs waving, like she wanted to snap out of it. Do not worry, I can help, she said with a bit wobble voice. He tried to protest while the girl got closer, but decided it is better if he just shut up because the girl was a bit bruised, maybe bleeding a little. Thankfully he was a bit more busy with his arm at that moment. The girl touched the rock with all of his fingers, and Izuku could feel the pressure decreasing. Her quirk, right. The rock left it a bit more, but still it was not enough. He gazed the girl a bit, she looked like she was about to vomit. She was probably overusing her quirk, Izuku could not ask for more. He sighed as he grabbed his crushed arm. He counted to 3 and pulled his arm with all his power left. A loud crack was heard and then a thud of the girl finally releasing the rock, and he fell to the back. He really wanted to scream, he was used to break his bones, but still it did not make it any less painful. He curled up, pressing his injured arm to his chest, both to hide it from the girl and prevent the sunlight from his skin. His clothing was ripped. The girl was about to run at him, but thankfully stopped suddenly as she covered his mouth. How's your— oh my god, I'm sorry, I could lift it more, she tried to say. It is really fine, I could not have saved my arm if you did not help. He answered with a reassuring voice as the girl threw up. I am sorry for preventing you to gain more points though. He mumbled as President Mick's voice was heard, informing that the time was up. As Izuku guessed, a nurse or something like that approached to them. They also made the girl stay away, but she was still looking at him worriedly. Izuku smiled her to show that it was okay. He has saved one more person. One more. Izuku was smiling strangely as the nurse, recovery girl, tried to check on him and found nothing. He was accepted. He was accepted. His emerald eyes locked to the screen, sitting in the corner of an alley, past midnight. He replayed the video again and again. This is your Hero Academia. It was normal to happy because he was going to pay for the things he has done when you think logically. However, he just could not name it, the feeling, which is making his heart beat faster than ever, getting his eyes teary, and he just did not know why was that joy was filling inside of him. It was such a strange feeling, as it should be, he was supposed to die. But still, he was feeling like he achieved, succeed, like he finally made it. He stared to the number 1 hero on the screen, standing confident like he did not have that nasty scar, destroying his organs. Smiling widely and fearlessly, like he was not throwing up blood when he coughed, to give everybody hope. Saving everybody like he was not trapped into the skinny, weak body. So that was a hero, it was not like how Dr. Nai-chan told. Can I? Become, even if. Notes. Nai-chan means big brother, BTW. I into Japanese pro or something, Nai-chan just sounds more sincere than big brother. The kudos and comments would be appreciated. Chapter 4. So strange yet familiar. Notes. This took the longest, but this chapter also the longest so far. Reason. I have started Angels of Death and I wanted to finish it first. I love Zack. Edited May 7th, 2022. Dude, what are these mistakes? See the end of the chapter for more notes. Izuku was the first one to arrive in the class. He knew maybe it was a bit extreme, arriving in the class that early, but it was not like he could sleep in or have a big breakfast with his family. Actually, it was the opposite. He had come as early as he could because he was starting to overthink. Nighttime was the time he is at his best, but darkness has always made him uneasy. The deepest and the most cursed fears would hunt him that time. He remembered how he used to curl up and try to clear his mind, at a room with no light or window, while everybody was sleeping. But desperation was not what he felt that night. It was pure excitement. Can I? Become, even if. He could not understand why it meant that much for him, and he did not want to. It was pointless. So he had tried to count the number of people he killed instead, to know how many was left for him to pay. He could not count all, to his luck. But the good news, he could remember the people he has eaten since that incident. which was 0, well, except from the number 1 hero's blood that he licked. He tapped his finger on the desk, watching the outside, other hand on his chin. He liked watching the view, which made him feel free. He flinched with the sound of the doors creak. I was not accepting someone that early, he thought as he leaned his head to front, covering his face with his cap. Yes, he had to wear those things to cover him. Well, arriving to class that early, it is a nice way for getting ready to learn new things, do not you also think? A voice called, with the sound of a pair of hands chopping the air. He started, a bit surprised from the boy's sudden words. I suppose. The other boy nodded as he held his hand, his finger were like glued to front. I am Tenya Ida and I suppose we will spend 3 years together. I hope it will not last that much. He thought as he also reached his hand hesitantly. Midoriya Izuku. He answered, hoping his dark green and sharp nails would not dig into others' skin or something. After the handshaking, the boy fixed his glasses and walked to a seat. And Izuku turned to outside again. People had started filling to the classroom, and Izuku never paid any attention. He was not here to interact or make friends, it was clear to nobody to get affected when he dies. The loud clank of the metal desk could be heard from his front. He turned to the source of the sound unconsciously, and saw the same pair of red eyes, glaring at him with an irritated way. Izuku glanced to him under his cap with his sharp green eyes. Oh? You are here, is your arm okay? Another voice called out for him as the red-eyed boy sat to his desk loudly, stretching out his feet to front. Did a bit more attention than usual turn to him? Did the girl have to call him out that way? Why has Ida started to walk towards him? The jet blue-haired boy passed by him, starting to warn the other in front of Izuku, as the girl with chocolate eyes and hair approached to him. Oh, yes, it is alright. He murmured as he gazed around to see if there was anybody looking at him. The girl looked at his hand to be sure, then lifted her gaze to his face. I am glad. It was so cool how you saved me from that rock like that. Thank you. She continued, a bit loudly, punching the air. It is not he started, but the girl interrupted. I am Michiko Uraraka, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, I am Midoriya Izuku. He answered a bit more slightly. A loud bam voice came this time, and when he turned his head to the source, he met with the sight of the blonde spiky-haired guy opening his mouth to say something, probably by yelling, pointing right towards Izuku threateningly as Ida tried to stop him from behind. You all can leave if you are here to make friends. Someone else stated this time, his voice sounding tired and done. The girl, Uraraka, took some steps back, and Izuku could see a grown man with definitely not combed black hair, lying on the ground with a strange yellow sleeping bag. I am your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota. He continued, zipping the yellow bag down as he got up. Class whispered each other, the man just rolled his eyes. Wear your gym uniforms and go to the training grounds. Izuku left immediately, to get away from the crowd and mostly the spiky-haired boy, while the class stood there, confused. The Quirk test, on the first day of school. Izuku stood silent in behind while their homeroom teacher explained through some students' complaints. Someone must have wanted to lighten up everybody and yelled, using our quirks freely, it can be entertaining. The teacher's red eyes meet with them with a sharp glare. Entertaining. Do you think natural events, villain attacks, deaths and injuries are also entertaining? Then let's make it even more entertaining then, the last one coming in the test is going to get expelled. He said monotonously. Izuku moved uncomfortably. One more person that he had to pass. He may also be joking, but Izuku was strongly thinking otherwise, like the others as they groaned. Tests were not that extreme for Izuku, Sensei had made sure that the freckled boy was better than average. But if Sensei had seen Izuku now, he probably would not let him out of the training room next 48 hours. He walked in the race as he let that sticky-haired short boy pass him. He dropped the weight in the middle, while he could lift something 3 times heavier, while an invisible girl shed visible sweat to not come to last. His eyes were always on the score signboard, to be sure that he was the second worst. He was not here to break anybody's motivation or pass somebody. But to his luck, not gaining any attention did not go as planned, clearly by homeroom's teacher glares at him. So he was mentally panicking while another group raced. His feet started to move on their own when someone with a belt and laser quirk fell to the ground in the middle, holding his abdomen with pain. It was not a bad fall or something, but he wanted to help. The homeroom teacher and also pro hero raised his eyebrows to the side of the green boy, with a lot of covering clothing running to someone who just had a simple fall, with a speed that could make him win the race easily. A problem child or what? He thought as the green boy helped the other with no clue that he was getting watched. The last round, throwing a baseball. Izuku checked he was in the circle properly and lifted his gaze to score table again, wanting to face anywhere but students. Was he in so much spotlight? Were they looking at him suspiciously or? Okay. He murmured, grabbing the ball more tightly. According to his calculations, he had to throw that ball a bit far in order to not be the last. Let's make it done. He thought as he tightened back to throw the ball. He got into the position and he flung his hand to front, feeling the force strength through his arm and it was gone. was gone. He wobbled forward with the impact of not letting the ball at the last moment. His grip on the ball got tighter, like he wanted to feel that power which could crush the ball in a second. It was not there. He took it. Why? I did not do anything. I did not, I swear I did not. That is way too below from what I accepted. Sensei complained. The small child with his long green hair covering his eyes turned to his back, trembling. But I did not even use it more than once. His silent voice trembled as he felt a blankness inside him. He yelled with a sudden impact to his face. I did not like it. His voice was deeper and more threatening this time, his hand grabbing Izuku from his face. The little boy's arms covered with drained blood tried to hold on to Sensei's arm to let himself free, shaking. But he had no power, Sensei had just taken it. His eyes got teary with a familiar feeling. Another quirk. He tried to breathe as the quirk filled his body, draining all the energy left from him. He wanted to throw up, he wanted to feel lighter, he wanted to. The blurring image of Sensei's cold eyes glowering under his white hair with an underestimating look was the last thing he saw just before he fell to the ground. He laid on his side, his green long hair all over his face, and getting wet with his tears. He laid there until finally Nai-san came, like a dead body. I did not. The freckled boy turned his head to back, with a cold glare. Eraserhead. He said as a recognition flicked on his mind with the sight of floating black hair and glowing red eyes. Sensei was so interested in that quirk. Sensei. He is not here, he tried to convince himself. He did not take or give anything, Eraser had just erased it. But regardless of how many times he repeated to himself, it was still the same red glowing eyes. Why did not you continue? You were not going to use your quirk anyways. His tired voice had a bit more emotion this time, however Izuku would rather if it was not anger. The freckled boy did not answer, just locking his gaze at the pro-hero. A strange urge of revenge filling inside him. I do not know if you are underestimating anybody with that gaze of yours, but what about this, he added as his hair fell to his place again. Do it now, and if it is not the second best score after Uraraka's infinity, you are expelled. A few gasps was heard among students, with some worried and maybe pitying looks. An irritated face of the second best score's owner in throwing ball. They directed their gaze to boy with strange clothing to see what is he going to do. Cry or apologize. The freckled boy started to breathe in and out unsteady. He suddenly felt like he was going to explode and he just could not breathe. He is like Sensei. He suddenly started feeling so fragile, so weak. He is like Sensei. He leaned in a bit, gripping his collar with his free hand as his eyes widened. He is like Sensei. A few students whispered to each other as the green boy stood there, like he was about to have a panic attack. Sensei, a familiar boy with glasses started as he lifted his hand to speak. Sensei. Suddenly, Izuku stepped back aggressively and firmly, his grip on the ball getting even tighter that his knuckles getting white. Sensei. He tightened his arm backwards as much as he could, his eyes locked to front. Students all went silent. Sensei. He felt the ball getting free from his fingers, with the impact of all that unwanted power on their limits. The ball disappeared in the sky. 910 meters, Pro Hero showed with a bit surprised look, and other students were even more surprised. The freckled boy breathed deeply one last time, and started to walk towards his place, a lot of looks and attention him as he passed by. He could not help but side-gaze Sensei last time. It was going to be even harder for him than he thought. Especially with the fact that his hands were still shaking, and the blonde boy's glare was still on him. Notes. Aizawa reminding Sensei to Izuku, it is unfair to Aizawa of course, but it may cause a good to Aizawa. Leave kudos and comment if you liked it, see you until the next chapter. Yes, the encounter with spiky yellow-haired guy with irritated red eyes is finally coming. Chapter 5. Mysteries of the Lost Memories. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. First day fiasco was continuing. Early, a 2vs2 battle in the first day after court test. Izuku puffed under his curls as the teacher explained, tapping on his desk boredly. They were gathered at the class after the test, their homeroom teacher suddenly revealing that he was not going to expel anybody in the first place, while he cross-eyed Izuku. The freckled boy was not unaware of other students' gazes. But it was probably normal with the fact that he has gone that far, after not even trying to win any of the tests. He was a clever boy, using his power like that was very unnecessary and reckless him to do. But he has panicked. He could still his heart beating faster with the thought of Sensei. And now, all he saw was him, when he looked at his homeroom teacher. But he was also aware that the homeroom teacher was a pro hero, so he was safe. He was supposed to be safe. So when the teachers switched to the 2vs2 battle, he was relieved. Yeah, relieved. He thought bitterly as the shining hero with a famous smile entered the room demurely. Put on your hero costumes and meet with me at the ground beta. He declared with an energy-filled voice through students' cheers for number 1 hero. Oh, about the costumes. It was actually enjoyable to design a hero costume. That enjoyment he just could not name was also there, his hand shaking with the pencil sometimes. It was also easy, like he has done it before. In the end, it was a costume to cover his skin, mostly dark green and black. It was simple and useful in the first sketch, but then he added some details. A mask. A mask to cover all of his face when it is needed, including his hair. They may be searching for him, and he had to keep his identity secret outside. So when he added a HUD with a cool red detailed mask, he also added bunny ears. Yes, bunny ears. As though he was not a bloodthirsty demon. He just could not help his mouth curving into a smile as he added some bunny details. It looks like a dog. He yelled accidentally as he lifted his paper to air, waving like it was a big victory. His Nai-chan sighed with defeat, lifting his gaze from the not very new book to the green-haired little boy with glowing eyes. "We are here so I can teach you how to read and write, Izuku," he said, the smile on other's face fading slowly. I know, but he immediately put his smile back with his happy attitude. "I have already done it, see? And I was sketching something randomly and I realized that it was like a dog." Nai-chan took notice of the little drawing on the paper, next to some letter and words scrabbled sappily. "It is nothing like a dog though," he thought. Then his eyes met with the smaller child, seeming happy as if he was not an experiment. His eyes took notice of the drained blood patterns on the paper's sides, probably from his nails on his little fingers grabbing the paper. He also noticed the boy's dirty and oversized clothes over his scarlet skin. But still smiling, as though feeding time for him was not nearly 1 hour later. Acting cheerful anyway, because it is the only time they had together with permission. His glare softened, which was uncommon as he closed the book. "However, I do not like dogs." "You do not?" the child mumbled, turning the drawing to himself. "Why?" His Nai-chan shrugged. The boy's emerald eyes seemed lost in thoughts for a while, as a serious look appeared on his baby face. "Oh, what about this then?" He suddenly yelled again, scrabbled something to the paper again. Nai-chan remained silent as the other seemed lost in work. Not so after, he lifted the paper again, but directed right to his Nai-chan this time. The older boy narrowed his eyes a bit. "What is? A bunny?" The drawings was not any better, it was just in 62 turned into a basic bunny with some details. "Is bunny okay?" The demon boy asked a bit more silently this time, like he wanted to make his Nai-chan comfortable. "Yes, Izuku, the bunny is okay." There was also another detail, inspired from the not very delicious stick. He has added a part to his costume which he can stuck into his mouth in certain times. It probably seemed like an accessory when it is hanging from his collar, but it was going to be very useful. He was paired with the chocolate-haired girl, Uraka he reminds himself, against Iida and the blonde guy. That blonde guy's name was Bakugo, as he heard. The rules were simple. Hero team, him and Uraka, has to find the bomb that the villain team, Bakugo and Iida, has hidden in a time limit. He stared at the building while the last preparations were done, then his teammate approached. "Hey." She started unsurely as she was interfering something. Izuku turned his head to her and looked at the girl, with a face that telling her to continue. "Do you have any plan?" she said more comfortably this time. The green-haired boy shook his head as a no. "It depends on other team. How will their strategy be? And their quirks, how much powerful or how suitable for the situation are they? Can their quirks would be a good match? It also depends on..." He subconsciously stopped when a big confused face appeared on the girl's face. "Idiot." He mentally slapped himself. "You have just done something extreme with your quirk, therefore that the girl may be scared already," also starting to mutter again. "You're right, but we have to start somewhere." Uraka replied, a finger on his chin, thinking. "But you know, I think we can do it. We already came to know each other and you are really cool," she said with the usual cheerfulness. Izuku looked at the girl with such an eagerness to win. They could win, if they can find a good strategy, and Izuku was already powerful. He turned his back suddenly, making his way to building and leaving the girl there. "Do not get hyped," he reminded himself. "Just let them win, whatever." It has been 5 minutes, Uraka and Izuku was just wandering through the halls. Izuku could hear some explosions from somewhere. Uraka probably also could hear it and realize how the sounds were getting closer that she asked a bit worriedly, "He is coming, are we going to just run away?" No lie, Izuku did not want to have an encounter with that boy, so yeah, they were escaping without a plan. The girl looked at him, but he just turned his emerald eyes away. "If we continue like that the time will run out," she continued. "And everybody, also the teacher, is watching us." "I know." Izuku wanted to respond. "It is why I am trying to avoid any unaccepted situation which could end bad." But he did not say anything as he examined the mask for the times he has to dig his fangs to something. "It is better if they just win. I am sorry, Uraka." He apologized mentally. He side-gazed the girl and saw her not giving up from winning, trying to think something herself like she has given up on him. "I am so selfish, am I?" he sighed. A loud crush and boom noise filled the hall and ground shook. It was just like the situation Sensei has trained Izuku for. So he moved on instinct, pushing Uraka to other side while he jumped to other side as the wall in front of the Max Blizz with a voice yelling "Deku," filling the hall. Izuku took notice of the blonde guy, little parts of rocks flowing around him, as a thin layer of smoke started to fade. Run. He screamed to Uraraka, and girl obeyed him after getting herself together in second. Then he also started to run to other side. He could hear Bakugo following him, of course, like he accepted. Well, at least he saved me from an awkward silence with Uraraka. He thought bitterly as he ran, hearing the explosions on and on behind him. Do not run like a coward, get back here, Deku. He yells again, his voice was so loud that it was really clear through the explosions. Izuku wanted to think, who the hell is Deku? But it was very obvious he is talking about him. The question was why, but Izuku was not planning to ask. Nope. He said to himself as he speed up, not today. He could hear Fade laughing at him when he faced with a dead end. But he was also trained for this. Bakugo stepped in front of him, looking irritated as ever, and Izuku has not known him even for a day. Insulting someone with a nickname like that is not appropriate behavior for a hero. He said calmly, keeping the distance between them. Do not play the dumb to me, damn Deku. He yelled, stepping forward in a threatening way. Where the hell were you? Home. He answered forcefully, words leaving an acidic taste on his mouth. Like a regular teenager. I really cannot understand what you are on. Bakugo's red eyes glowed with anger as he stepped forward again to grab Izuku from his collar, but Izuku was faster. He stepped back the same amount, glaring right into others' eyes. Do not touch me. Then stop messing with me. The same name, familiar lookings, Deku. He hissed. Where were you last 8 years? Last 8 years. 8 years of suffering and darkness. And before that. Izuku's head was spinning and his knees could give up any time, but he tried to not give a hint. He knows me, he knows me, he knows me. At least he used to know. This guy was from the only years he did not have any memory of. He knew him before he was a demon. People can have same names and familiar looks. I think you are mixing me with someone. He tried to say without stuttering. But his voice was dry, and his emerald eyes were locked to anywhere but Bakugo. Ridiculous. I know you. He roared. You have got a lot to explain, Deku. You do not know me. Izuku hissed, tightening his teeth and feeling his fangs. You do not know anymore. I changed. Whoever I was, he is gone. He started to run forwards. He was panicking again. His mind was screaming, wrong, you are doing it wrong. As he ran to wall to jump over Bakugo and pass him. Yes, he was doing it wrong that Bakugo grabbed him from his foot and shoved him to the ground. I do not want to. Bakugo grabbed him from his throat. I do not want to learn. Do you think you can just disappear and come back, like you are playing with us? He tightened his grip on Izuku's throat. Are you aware how worried she? Izuku wanted to learn with all of his might. Did he have a family? Did he have friends? What was his dreams? What kind of foods he liked? What kind of game he played? What kind of a child he was? Was he happy? Was he happy with any people? If so, why did not they come to save him? Izuku stared to other boy's face shaped with hatred and anger. He felt the grip on his throat. He heard how he called him Deku. We were not friends, right? You hate me. What is the reason? I do not want to know. Why are you calling me Deku? I do not want to know. I do not want bad memories anymore. And if there was anybody who loved me, they better just forget because in the end, it is just a peaceful death waiting for me. He touched Bakugo's arm. Just dig your nails in, watch the blood leaking, and then have a good meal after that long. You deserved it, right? That would also shut him up. Do not ever interfere. After a powerful kick in the stomach, his throat was finally free from Bakugo's grip, which was already pointless. He agreed that kicking style was his biggest weapon, with the sight of Bakugo throwing up because of the impact. Kicking, like a bunny. You are going to kill him. A digital voice was heard. Really you are interfering that late. Izuku thought, looking to speaker. He will not die if it dodges. Bakugo yelled behind him. Oh, so the warning was not to Izuku. Izuku barely saw Bakugo pulling the pin of his equipment, which was probably to increase the power of his explosions, and they were already powerful. So the idea of it killing someone if it is rightly directed and in short distance sounded possible. Izuku did not even try to dodge though. He felt a hot wind blowing through his body and maybe setting his hair on fire slightly. The impact of explosion came later. Izuku felt his clothes getting ripped partly and his skin burning painfully. Some little rocks grazed his face, blood leaking from them. But in the end, when smoke faded, it was just his clothes damaged. He stood there with a scarlet skin and a smirk on his face. He reached a communication device on his ear. Luckily it was not burned, as he enjoyed the view of a very confused Bakugo. Do not even try to interfere. Hey Uraraka. It is a bit late, but how about kicking their butts? Notes. Hope you all are enjoying this, because I do. I really get excited when I think of the things going to happen. But I would be even more motivated if you guys write what do you think of the chapter, and maybe write things that you want to see. I feel like I am writing it to myself sometimes, and it makes me take longer to write. Or maybe start another fanfic. I already have some ideas, but I have no intention to abandon this because I am proud of it. Chapter 6. The Right to Choose. Notes. Aogesu is back. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Where are you? Izuku yelled to communication device as he ran to be heard among explosions. The blonde's voice was annoying him to the end, but it was worth the urge and enjoyment of taking action, freely awakening inwards of his demon body. In the end, that was what he created for. That was he suffered for, loathed himself for, deranged for. The thirst for fight and blood. I found the bomb and Ida. The girl's voice was also high while answering, and Izuku was delighted for the same enthusiasm radiating off from her voice. The demon boy's eyes wandered around like he wanted to examine where exactly he was in the building, while Uraraka explained the details of the bomb's location. Well, he started mumbling, not stopping to run. It was like the instructions and the map of the building appearing in his vision, and the gray stone walls around him started to feel familiar. Then it should be right there. He suddenly blurted out and looked up. Bullseye. He smirked, but he immediately got back to action, not diverting his attention away as Bakugo's voice echoed through the walls, steadily getting louder. He turned a corner sharply, stopped right away, sticking to the wall with the predator's instinct, and waiting for his prey. He was easy to spot actually, but if the person following you was not contemplating properly and had a mind devoted to just innate urge to attack, it did not matter. He has used this trick to a lot of Noma before. And he was there, looking really focused and irritated as always, while he dashed in front of Izuku, which Izuku answered by jumping exactly at the time. Normally Izuku's arms would not be wide enough to hold on to a body, so he would end up falling to his back, and maybe get crushed by Nomu's foot, his limbs breaking as he gasped with agonizing wave of pain shooting through his body, and make him desperate for a mere deep breath. Even if it was not something vital to him. So when Izuku felt his fingers meeting in front of Bakugo, his arms enveloping him, he held on to it really tightly. His pointed nails digging in the blonde's costume, he paid extra attention to not grab him on his bare skin, for mutual interests. Bakugo collected himself real fast, however Izuku was faster. This is going right into trash, and I am getting a brand new one. He noted to himself internally as he stuck his stick equipment to Bakugo's mouth, and held its ropes just like he was holding a saddle. Izuku could feel the other's boy getting even more irritated, his howling being just another sign of it. He tightened the rope and Bakugo's head swung backward, his arms reaching to the stick. Izuku suddenly stopped holding the rope, and held Bakugo's left arm instead, which was reaching to his mouth, forcing Bakugo's palm to face to the ceiling. Kaboom! Izuku whispered to others' ear, and the last thing he saw was Bakugo's red eyes whitening. He pulled the pin. The freckled boy was really glad Uraraka was on his team, and their soon-to-be victory was all thanks to her, not giving up on winning, while Izuku had no intention to win. And finding the bomb, if she had not, they probably would not have enough time to create a new plan. So when Hero Team's victory was announced, Izuku understood that he was not wrong for thinking that Uraraka would use the exploding ground as an opportunity to use her quirk and get to the bomb, while Iida had his attention diverted. Izuku heard his used to be his, he was not planning to use it again. Mouth sticks tucks out from falling to ground. Everything had happened that fast, and he let go of Bakugo too. Izuku had no intention to listen Bakugo's yelling again, so he has already made his way to where others were gathered. He smiled to himself as he stepped out of the building. He just had his first victory ever. Fortunately it looked like it was the last UA's surprise today, therefore what Izuku just should do was waiting until others' battles were finished. Plus, Bakugo was not there, and he could handle with just a few eyes on him. He stared at the screen as other battles passed by. They had really powerful quirks. They were interesting and open to development. Izuku could see a bright future ahead them. Izuku could and would, if he did not exist. All quirks. Fire, electrification, acid, laser. He already had something like that. He had something to beat them too. They had no chance. No chance. His classmates did not know what being a hero was going to cost them. They were probably inspired by others to become a hero because of their powerful quirks. Heroes were cool, of course they would want to be one. They had other inspirations maybe. But would they still be thinking about saving others while they fell to their knees in front of him, bleeding, maybe lost some of their appendages, pain aching in their body, and the crushing existence of sensei? Would not be begging. Would not be crying. Screaming, begging for help. Izuku watched the reflection of cheerful attitudes of the hero team just had lost, motivational words in their lips on the screen. What a pity. Izuku thought bitterly. They were not giving up, were not losing their motivation, probably because it was just a fake battle. But one day, they were going to lose for the last time. The end of the team they have lost to was the same. Everybody had someone more powerful than them, and in the top of the pyramid, it was Sensei. Izuku felt bad for them and wished he could do something, but he knew he was not worth anything against Sensei. So he just wished them a good life until the certain day, and promised himself that he is not going to let them be in any pain while he exists. It was finally lunchtime and students were making their way to cafeteria. Izuku followed them to not see Maud, but he had no intention going to there. He was sure a drop of blood from a clumsy student gazing his finger instead of his steak with knife would smell more appetizing among all the delicious foods cooked at cafeteria. He took notice of All Might most likely approaching him, however Bakugo got out of somewhere, and probably asked something, therefore Izuku managed to get away quickly. But then he crashed into Uraraka. Sorry, he mumbled, stepping backwards a little. I was looking for you. She cheered, not caring the bumping as it seemed. Izuku wanted to kindly reject and disappear until the break is finished, but Uraraka continued, showing the familiar jet blue-haired boy with glasses. You remember Iida-kun? We were just heading to cafeteria, fancy joining us? Actually, Izuku stated, looking back to Iida to see if there was any offended look on him from their victory just back then, but continued a bit relieved when he saw the friendly look the boy had. I am not that hungry. Really? Uraraka exclaimed a bit surprised. Having proper meals and adequate nutrition is really important for a hero in training. Iida warned. Yeah, I thought everybody would be hungry after today. Uraraka continued after Iida backed up to her. Oh, believe me, Uraraka. I really am. I am so hungry. It is a big Quirk thing. Izuku answered, biting his lips but not showing his fangs. His fangs were aching because of bloodthirst he had, and he could swear that the sound of blood running in Uraraka and Iida's veins had started throbbing on his head. Oh, okay, at least accompany us to the cafeteria. Uraraka offered, and Izuku was glad for their decency. Why do you guys want to be a hero? Iida inquired completely out of blue, causing Izuku to flinch. He had no interest in jumping to answer, so he just turned his gaze to chocolate-haired girl who seemed uncomfortable. Well, this seemed a little selfish, but... Uraraka answered, decelerating her steps and not lifting her gaze up. For money, she declared. But she immediately added, avoiding both boys' surprised face, and maybe turning to a judging one. My family has been trying to cope with some financial matters, and I want to help them, thus I can repay them for all the times they supported me in this road. The words spilled from her lips in an incautious and explaining way. Iida fixed his glass in an apologetic way, most likely for judging without knowing the insights. After all, hero-ness is just another job to earn money. Izuku said, cutting the tension. And to help your family, I think it is not a problem. He added, inwardly wanting to reassure the girl. Although, there was a vigilante he remembers, who advocates the real heroes according to his perspective, not the heroes who become heroes for money or fame. He would ask Nai-chan what he thinks, but he would never answer. It was forbidden. Vigilantes, villains, heroes. It was all forbidden for Izuku to think about them. All he was supposed to get stronger. Uraraka looked relieved, then she turned to Iida. What about you? Izuku barely heard Iida talking about his big brother, and how it was a family heritage to become a hero. He has never questioned it. Why was it forbidden? He knew Sensei, Nai-chan and the doctor were the villains, All Might was the #1 hero, there were also vigilantes. He knew he was supposed to work for villains too. He already did not have a chance to select his side, so why bother? He could not say he cared about it either. He did not want to harm anybody, but becoming a hero or a vigilante to lose against a certain sum in the end. No. He presumably would not even intervene about these kinds of things if he had a chance in the beginning. He would stay away. But that was not he could say when the question was directed to him. Quick, find something. He yelled at himself mentally, the other two's curious face locked to him. He started nervously. I want to be a hero who saves everyone with a smile, just like All Might. He said monotonously. Words and sentences had just formed on his mind and fell from his lips without stuttering, like it was not an improvisation at that moment. He would stay away if he could. Can I? Become, even if. Notes. Okay, that was it. I can't believe I am continuing after like 1 year. Lame manga, deku is just so perfect. Also, comments and kudos are really appreciated, and would actually encourage me to do not delay the other chapter for another year. Chapter 7. And. Notes. I have to study but I can't. See the end of the chapter for more notes. So, the one with white bare body attired in a suit started, formality in his voice, attracting the other people in the room to turn their heads to the bear reverently. Everyone is informed about the situation regarding why we have gathered here. He continued like he was accepting a confirmation rather than an answer. The sun shined bright outside, illuminating the spectacular view of the peaceful city. The blonde hero, as known as the symbol of peace in his muscular form, diverted his attention away from the reflected light to the esteemed manager of UA. Promoted from the teachers in the room nodding simultaneously, the bear named Netsu took the floor again. With especially the call of Aizawa, we are here to discuss about a freshman, Izuku Midoriya. He checked the papers to verify the name. Aizawa, would you like to take the lead? The man's tired but cautious eyes scanned the room on the furthest place from the sun's reflection, as he accepted the floor with his gesture. He was glad that Netsu had not called all the department, but just one's class one as shared classes with. Izuku Midoriya is from my new class who passed my first exam successfully. He owns a peculiar yet strong quirk. He explained, stopped like he was trying to sort the words before he continued. But, I rather think his quirk is ambiguous. The intrigued faces stared at him, which he found very uncomfortable. However, there were nothing compared to piercing gaze of All Might without a curiousness. It is written that his quirk is kind of a combination of regeneration and strength, labeled as demon, also including features like having no need to sleep or eat. He read from the document. And the only weakness entailed is against sunshine. Tossing away the papers, he continued with a louder intonation. I think the report is wrong or incomplete. It is written unprofessionally and rushed. I believe something is trying to get covered by means I cannot predict right now. Netsu nodded in understanding, not lifting his gaze from the papers. All Might leaned towards the table slyly and interlaced his fingers as some whisperings filled the room. Aizawa sighed once and uttered, but what led me to discuss about him was the fact that he had a panic attack right in front of the class. Some gasps mingled with whispers. It was not caused by first day exam stress or simple anxiety. Someone provoked him. Someone who saw in me. The black-haired man's shoulders were taut, and his yellow eyes glowed. As a hero myself, I would rather being the one who saves people from panic attacks, not the one who causes it. The room went silent, and tension thickened with the underground hero's sharp and certain words. Netsu cut through the tension with a calm tone. You are right about his reports. He started from the beginning, the shuffling noises of the papers accompanying his words. His living location is also a conundrum. So I wanted to check to be sure. He turned to his left after signaling the teacher and hero sniped to continue. I went to place submitted in report. It is in a bonded accommodation. So he submitted a place where nobody lives, and simply took his acceptance letter from the mailbox. Voices spoke from the room. Which means he is also homeless. Honestly, how come we never realized that? What about his family? Among whispers and questions, All Might remembered his first encounter with the boy. He recalled the battered cloak around him, how he was in street such early hours and the red-stained collar. Oh God. It was not from treating All Might's wounds. Obviously. He scolded himself inwardly. But what was that from? He did not seem wounded. But he could have been healed, right? Or, what if he is a villain? Someone's voice spoke instead of his unwelcome suspicions. His weak stomach churned with the evident probability. It could not be true, right? Even though the blood painting him, the disquieting fangs that donated his mouth, the green strip patterns covering his body, as someone who saw and smiled to multitude amount of various eyes belonged to real villains, All Might himself could say that. I am sure young Midoriya has no such intentions. He interfered with certainty. The emerald eyes he owned had glimmered with heroism when All Might had stated that he should try becoming a hero. Aizawa, who seemed as certain as All Might, continued for him. I second that. I firmly believe the problem is the person he saw when he looked at me. He claimed. A feminine voice that lures any man and inquired, I wonder why is not he seeking for help, well he has made it here. She murmured, but otherwise, I agree with All Might and erased her head. Very well. Netsu spoke. Aizawa, can we trust you about surveillance of Midoriya? You should make sure that he is safe and sound inside or outside the borders of the school. Aizawa nodded simply, but Netsu continued. Also, it is your duty to prevent him from causing any kind of harm, and take him down if needed. His scarred eye glinted. Aizawa nodded again. Then, is everybody in accord that Midoriya Izuku will be under surveillance until he is proven to be guilty or innocent? And this case should be kept as a confidential situation. He raised the question to the teachers. Realization slapped All Might when he found himself desperately cheering for the boy. He was definitely favoring the boy. I am glad that we are in consensus. Netsu smiled. You may dissipate, thanks for your kind attentions. All Might got up from his head along other teachers, Aizawa leaving the room in a rush especially, presumably to watch over the boy. The symbol piece of peace smiled to himself. He had weirdly good feeling about this. His smile grew even bigger with his phone vibrating because of accepted message coming from a certain detective. Izuku was tired. It has been nearly 2 weeks since school has started, and the weather was getting rather windy. A breeze blew through the road, engulfing his weakened demon body enclosed within clothing. He shuddered slightly, and he was not sure if his exhausted eyes were closed, or it was just the weather that was dark. He was delighted that days were getting shorter and shorter, thus he did not have to worry about sun while going to the school. He was trying to be early to arrive at class though, considering that he did not have a place to stay. He definitely was not enamored with stalling himself uselessly in sleepless nights, and he wanted to encounter with minimum amount of people possible. He was starting to have doubts though. He was not sure whether it was paranoia or presence a couple of eyes on his back. The forest near the UA was where he spent the nights, wandering around the very much same trees and plants, as he paid attention for any UA security guard. Forest was the best place for him, being the best place to hunt coming in the #1 reason. Squirrels or rabbits, maybe birds. They tasted absolutely awful, but he was deprived. Deprived for the thick crimson liquid going down through his throat, deprived for the flesh to dig his fangs into. Cooking and eating may have been an art, but for Izuku, it was nothing dainty or delicacy. And besides all the loathing he had against eating already, there was also the feeling of someone watching him. The most terrifying and frustrating part was the fact that Izuku never actually has found a clear evidence. He sighed again and his head unconsciously leaned in, his eyelids closing surely this time. Izuku could feel that he was in his last straw, whether someone was watching him or not, hunt was going to happen that night. His knees suddenly buckled up and he faltered upwards, his ravenous body protesting to continue. He wondered what would happen if he actually depletes all his energy as his body fell limp on the floor. Would he die, searching for blood like a zombie? Or lay on the ground like a corpse? His face grimaced with the impact of his body colliding with cold ground. Get up. He curled up as another breeze blew over, a weirdly relaxing chill running down his spine. I will. His eyes were open but he could not see. His ears were sharp and hearing, but he could not listen. He was conscious, but his mind was blank. For a moment, he thought and felt he was out of that disgusting body he loathed. The continuous feeling of disquiet he had to live with has vanished. A blank paper was opened, he was floating over the void. He was not sure if his body actually had managed to smile, however it did not matter that moment. Enough. He should have known. His mind has given up countless times before. It was always his ravenous demon body that dragged him forward. It was the same again. He came to his senses again with the feeling of heat tingling his fingertips and the pulse of a living throbbing on his palm. His vision cleared and the wind in the stern ground's cold started to bite him again. He barely gained the awareness of his unconsciously reached out arm holding on to a dog. His eyes widened as his nails abruptly and firmly dug to the animal's flesh, blood painting his vision. He shifted into sitting position heavily as he licked the blood splashed on his lips. It was like all fundamental mechanisms have started to work again, adjusting to the life once again. He blankly stared at the dog's lifeless body and leaned in. The sun still has not risen, although the weather was rather brighter now. He let his instinct take over as he drank some more blood. Nai-chan hated dogs anyway. The cold of a metal piece tingled his hand, turning the dog carefully. Maybe he could pretend like it was not dead after all, to feel less guilt. A name engraved on the metal piece took his attention. Oh, the color. He sighed as he got up on his feet, holding the dog's body with delicacy. He felt one more life, and an owner left in sorrows gulped down his throat with the blood he gained in return. Now it was time to get rid of the blood and clues. Luckily it was not something new to him. He hated the energy filled himself. He hated the low-quality blood's taste left in his mouth. Entranced, he continued down the blank path to the school, until another smell lured him in instantly. It was mingled with the breeze, slight but powerful. A burn, which he was not enamored to label as barbecue for him. And he was not surprised when his deranged instincts trying to drag him there. For the dog and owner, he thought himself as he ran down the left road, after realizing that the source was from UA, and maybe he could be some kind of help. Let me look. He demanded to the boy with half-white half-red hair. The other boy seemed puzzled with sudden words of Izuku, but his face was replaced with a stern look soon after. From outside, there was nothing unusual about him, aside from the burnt on his arm, beneath his sleeve that Izuku could feel. You are from the class with the weird quirk. He mumbled like he was verifying his memory. What do you want? And you are the aloof guy from class. Izuku retorted. And your name was? He scoffed, spitting out, I have no intention to make friends. The emerald eyes squinted, neither do I. He answered with his intonation. Now, please let me look. The other boy seemed taken aback against the answer and certainty on Izuku's voice. He is wavering. The weird quirk I have, you know. Izuku explained with a softer and lighter tone, respecting that he may not want it to be revealed by someone else, even though in front of the school was almost empty. I sense that you have burned yourself somehow. Somehow? The gesture of the other boy was giving Izuku unpleasant probabilities why. The boy with heterochromatic eyes sighed, his palm covering his left scarred eye. It is nothing. I was training. As someone with both fire and ice quirk, you have managed to hurt yourself, huh? With the element of your quirk, even. He inquired as he leaned to others' face closer, inspecting others' mimics. How the boy retreated when he got closer, and he winced whenever Izuku said fire caused some strange feeling awake himself. You sure, silly. He smiled as cheerfully as he could to reassure the other, and alleviate the tension a bit. The boy's multicolored eyes widened. You know, I had a brother who also had a lot of scars. He proclaimed. They hurt a lot. The one in front of the big mirror answered quietly. Izuku could say that his Nai-chan's mind was somewhere else, as he carefully caressed the scratch marks with lotion. The demon boy just watched him from the back. The not very cozy room was empty except for the two of them. Only a bed and a mirror was present, and the absence of windows was the cause of the dusty air filling the basement. It was the closest thing Izuku could define his home. Especially when Nai-chan visited him. No, the bigger boy gave a proper answer, finally collecting his thoughts. He turned to the demon boy to rivet his attention fully to him. Good for scratch marks, the doctor know his work. He continued, closing the petite box of lotion. It never works on the continuous itching and perpetual urge though. He spitted the words, venom and bitterness filling his voice. He glanced the box one last time before throwing it to Izuku, who was sitting on this small bed. Where are you? Startled from the abrupt throw, Izuku watched as the bigger boy rushed out of the room. His inquiring cut through, he just watched his Nai-chan's disappearing silhouette with the little box on his palms. Grief filled his heart as his ears catched the distressed sound of scratching, and he knew where exactly the boy was going, or rather, what to do going. Izuku's emerald eyes watched students entering the campus one by one, the lesson time slowly approaching. Here. Handing the petite box over to the boy with dual-colored hair. You can use this yourself, in case you are uncomfortable. The other was cautious, but it seemed like he had sensed Izuku's sincere intention, and grabbed the box from Izuku's sharp-nailed hands. Todoroki Shadow. He exposed his name in the end, his gaze locked on the little box. Izuku smiled for the progress and could not help but notice that something was off. Am I supposed to know you? Inquired, a little shyly. It was Todoroki's turn to be surprised, which caused Izuku to only panic more. It's just your face, I mean you seem surprised that I don't. Shoot, is he a celebrity or something? I have made a blunder, do I seem too isolated now? Is this suspicious? I made it so clear that I am not a normal teenager or... No, it is nothing. Todoroki cut through his panic state, trying to maintain his composure, but Izuku could see the crumbs of pleasure. Strange. The chatting voices of students filling the campus had become more evident now, disturbing both of them visibly. Izuku got up, Todoroki following him. His emerald eyes glanced at the box on Todoroki's hand. He did now have time to ponder about though, because of a very clear factor, sunrise. Suddenly, a shot of pain struck him on his left eye, causing him to reflexively bend down and cover his eye. Wah. He heard Todoroki's voice as he hissed in pain, and his eyes got moist. He was late. Izuku barely took notice of the sun's initial lights filling the air steadily with his blurred vision. Well, I better go. He straightened up, trying to not hiss in pain. Not waiting for an answer, he rushed to the gates of the building, sun rising behind him higher and higher. You can keep it. He yelled last time to the puzzled boy left behind. It was never mine from the beginning anyways. Are you sure about this, All Might? A voice spoke from the other side of the phone. The blonde hero nodded, then blurted out a yes. We have done our researches deeply. And we have a witness too. He gazed the spiky-haired boy, slumped down to the plastic chair, a perpetual sulking on his face. I am not even talking about the progress this will provide us regarding his case. Izuku Midoriya definitely should meet with his mother. Notes. Well, this was a long chapter. I definitely love meeting Deku and Todoroki in various ways. Well, now that we have foreshadowed Inko's appearance in the next chapter, emotional scenes are soon. Thank you for all kind comments and kudos. Chapter 8. So long, good night. Notes. Sorry for being late, not when you're late at least though, I just had some busy weeks filled with headaches. I have listened way too slow and reverb while writing this. Ever after high theme song plus Princess Power shining bright. Way too nostalgic, I just cannot. But bulletproof love and a bunch of emo songs. Also, I am ruining my body, the future myself should be hating on me. But I have never actually thought of living so long, and I have just realized that it is not up to my appeal. I am afraid now. I could have never imagined, huh? See the end of the chapter for more notes. Izuku really was starting to feel regret and doubt engulfing him inside. Like the regular continuous cycle of these disgusting feelings were getting really heavy, and you could not imagine it would turn out like this, when you have first encountered the situation which provoked these emotions. Did he have the chance to change his mind now? Standing on the doorway of an apartment, waiting for the inevitable opening of the door soon, there was also the hand of the sign of peace on his shoulder, which he assumed that was to relieve him, not that it was working. The sun was bright outside and he plunged more into the shadow, reluctantly to the doorframe. He had not could avoid the blonde hero that day, and he had just asked him to come along. Izuku did not want any trouble, so he had obeyed. That was the moment the seeds of overwhelming emotions were engraved inside him. On the black and exquisite car of the hero, he had inspected All Might's face from the back seat for a hint, his whole body tightened. All Might had checked his phone again and again, like to clarify something, and then a smile had engraved his face. When he had proclaimed that they were going to see Izuku's mother, he had just slumped down on his seat, lowering his gaze for his blank face to not be seen by enthusiastic gaze of All Might seeking. His was completely zoned off for the rest of the road, and owing to his short-term memory taking over, his mind was fully blank about what he had thought about the situation firstly. They did not matter. The current moment and the heaviness of his heart were way more important. Could he dodge to meet with her by any chance? He had no intention to find his mother from the beginning anyways. He did not even know he had one. He had a family. He still has a family. Would not this encounter only prevent him from his path? She must have suffered a lot when he disappeared. When was it? So long, so long. What about the fact that he was striding, no, running, to his death? Would she miss him again? Would she mourn for him? Wish you wished that he was here with her, to the end. The thoughts running through his head was interposed by the awareness of the evident, which led his thoughts to slide to other side. The sharp and dark nails, fangs, strip patterns adorning his skin, big pupils, the body of his. As she had loved him so long ago. She did. She is your mother, family. The only one left behind. He was gone, the deku had Bakugo labeled as, the son his mother had labeled as, it was all gone. I know you wanted to. What she was going to see was very apparent, and which was going to leave her appalled inevitably. Oh, you deserve to be selfish once. She was going to be disgusted, horrified. Why don't you just let it the blink of hope to enlighten you once? He was going to die anyway. Embrace her. She will just want to flee when the door in front of him was opened. The squeezing on his taunt shoulders by All Might brought him back to the reality, his emotional roller coaster inward him reaching its peak. The creaking voice of the opening door jolted him to lift his gaze instantly, meeting with the woman slightly shorter than him. Every time Izuku had looked into mirrors so far, he could not see anything belonged to him. The body which was forced to have could leave him in sorrow no matter what. And it was acceptable after some point. He would also see his Nai-chan hiding behind limbs, and think that this was their destiny. But when his eyes met with the woman's already moist eyes, the mirror was just in front of him. It was a graceful mirror, showing what he was supposed to be, not only by the appearance, but also with the surging various emotions awakening. What was home? What was memories? What was a human? What was he? His head throbbed viciously, causing him to grimace and squeeze his eyes shut as he buckled a bit. Just let it be. He did not want to remember, recall, reminisce. He was not enamored with this kind of pain. And after all, the woman's sight was not going to be what he saw. So he did. He embraced whatever was going to happen, not opening his eyes or stepping forward again. The woman let a weep out, and Izuku shuddered with the impact of woman's touch filled with delicacy. She embraced her to a hug, crying slightly. Izuku's knees buckled up, and he unwittingly held on to the woman, returning the hug, his grip on the woman's back. The woman's weeping filled his ears, and he could not just believe she was holding him this close. Being up the clouds, finally an inner peace, and if not, this was more than enough already. The continuous cycle was broken, he just could not process. Izuku. She whimpered, emotions hovering her voice. That's me. It is just me. He cried out selfishly. Did it turn out the way you have wanted? The voice from the other side of the phone asked, intrigue. Even better. All Might answered as he strode over the road, sun setting behind him, red and orange adorning the sky. Thank you so much, Tsukuachi. Do not even mention it. His voice buzzed. But don't you think this is even more suspicious? Something is definitely wrong and we are missing a piece here. All Might frowned by the claiming of the evident. You are right. But he is on our side. We can prevent any detrimental action. He recalled the memory of the student named Bakugo coming to him to tell about Midoriya in the first day. The stern and hinted with worry face of his as someone who looked like could lose his temper over anything had told a lot to the hero. And by the actions of the Midoriya, he was sure that the boy was the victim here. I told his mother to not bring up about past, in accordance with young Bakugo's statements that Midoriya could have been living a kind of amnesia. He spoke. I do not want him to be pressured during the process. I understand. Detective Tsukuachi answered. Just be careful. If this was an anime or fiction, you would accept Izuku to slump down with his first step into the house, grabbing his head and yelling, I remember. Well, the woman sheds tears filled with happiness. It was a quite ordinary prologue, in contrast. The house was tidy and clean, a cozy aura engulfing the air. There were some paintings lining the walls but no pictures. He was feeling like a stranger, and the idea of this place being his home was understood by his brain, not by his heart. The anxious gaze of the woman provoked him to say or at least do something. Such a lovely house. He mumbled uncertainly, his intonation ceasing in a weird way because he just could not decide what to call her, ma'am or mother. The woman's puffed and reddened eyes blinked once and sent him a genuine smile which Izuku returned slightly, relieved by managing to lift some weight from her shoulders. He was being nice completely out of blue, the urge to do so coming deep inside him, where a sun may be still blinking. He wanted to be graved in that blink, selfishly enough. Let me retour the house to you, she continued a little more confident, but the hints of anxiety shining in her eyes. Izuku nodded hastily and let the woman lead him upstairs. The room's door was wide open, like it had gotten prepared. Inside the room was again nothing ordinary, the computer across the door, a bed next to it and bookshelves. They were also completely dustless. Izuku appreciated the woman's hard work. I made some changes. The woman started behind him. We thought it would be better to not overwhelm you with patterns of memories. Her words was considerate and calm, causing Izuku to feel owing to her even more. Thank you. He tried to put his thoughts into words, but it was interposed by the woman. I am just glad that you're home, she claimed, staring at her fiddling fingers. He just gawked at the woman's once again teared and flushed eyes behind her green strands. His heart took action and his legs started moving unwittingly, reaching out to the woman's hands as dainty as he could. She accepted his hands with sharp nails only to hurt and graze pupil, with skin to be only painted with blood. She squeezed them, transmitting a comforting heat. Izuku wanted to answer, maybe me too. Or thank you. There was no need for a word spoken that moment though, and he solely accepted her. He apologized inwardly for what was up to come soon but did not run away. Just like how she had vanished the house from memories for his comfort, he was going to eliminate the thoughts and discard of the painful end from the memories to be created from now on, for her. For her mother. Of course, he was going to be even severely punished soon for every good thing he time to time gains, by another troublesome UA plan about to turn out very detrimental. Notes. This was gonna be a little longer, but I wanted to present you all a new chapter as soon as possible. I have given Izuku some good moments had I. Now time to rip it back from him. Chapter 9. Stole me. Notes. Anyone who watches Shiguang Dailyren. Anyways, enjoy. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Following days were bright, in a non-adverse way to Izuku. The tension and awkwardness was blanketing them in the start. It was not easy to adapt and adjust to a family-like state when the two did know each other at all. They could not reminisce either. Mrs. Midoriya was already pretty anxious with all movements and words of her, contemplating whether it would trigger Izuku or not. Which Izuku found heartwarming. So they started to know each other better, by wandering around the streets of their neighborhood when Izuku comes back from school, expanding over to malls and parks later on. Much to Izuku's favor, they would not go in crowded places. Although it has taken a little time for his mother to get used to the son's fatality upon Izuku, or the fact that he did not sleep or eat, Izuku would kindly sit across her mother at the dining table while she eats and protests that this was not proper. His smile would reassure her. She was considerate so that their trips would be in the evenings, much quieter and free. In the afternoons, they would spend time in their house, watching films or maybe board games. And when it was finally the end of the day, their ways would separate, Mrs. Midoriya's way to sleep with concerns and unanswered questions lingering over her dreams, and Izuku's way to sit in the memory-free blank room until the dawn, hunger and doubts throughout the night. Who was he to complain? In contrast, why was he grateful? He had pretty much enough time to ponder about the conditions and consequences in these late nights. Was he binding his mother to himself way too selfishly? He knew how to look at the evident and logical. His whole life was filled with decisions regarding this way, including the one to kill himself for good. But those nights, he learned how to see what he desired and how it was so wrong but felt so right. His plan was still proceeding, but he gave in to his mother. Be careful today in USJ. His mother declared her concerns, standing at the door's frame. Izuku solely smiled, thinking, I can lose some limbs there and still be back home in one piece. The worry on the woman's face was clearly visible, even though the darkness before the dawn was blanketing his sight. Yue was clearly on it again, another class training, in a place called USJ. He was not quite aware what were they supposed to do and could not care less, however his classmates seemed to be pretty thrilled upon it. Whatever. He waved his mother one last time and started to stride along the way. Don't you guys think that Midoriya's quirk is also strange? Izuku barely catched his name getting mentioned among all the other chit-chats transpiring in the bus. He had found himself dozed off in the back seat, the furthest from windows, as the bus drove along the road, the slight but steady noises of the vehicle's motor, blending with the students' conversations, and playing in the background for him. What do you mean? Well, you know, the short boy with purple balls on his head explained. It is like, so powerful without an evident weak spot at all. Izuku slightly turned his eye to the boy's side, not completely turning his head. And you know, he maybe would surpass Todoroki, even. Mineta, he remembered the name, continued, some hums among others following his statement, while Todoroki remained inactive. Well, should you be also afraid too, Bakugo? The blonde with dark lighting-shaped strands teased, caressing his chin with a smirk. Ha! Some explosions shook the bus, causing Aizawa-sensei to give a warning. Izuku turned back to his thoughts. Whatever. He remained passive, while an hero named 13 made some clarifications regarding their training. USJ seemed very well fortified, consisting multitude of different conditioned areas for rescue and combat training. Whatever. He just wished to finish this as soon as possible with minimum effort. Wow, great. You have even real villains. Kirishima punched the air behind him. Wait, what? He pushed the ones in front of him to see where Kirishima pointed, gaining his utmost focus an instant. We don't have villains. 13 answered, both Aizawa and her tensing. Real villains. Izuku muttered as he watched dozens of people appeared from a purple aura, now in front of other students. The same purple aura formed just above them, steadily growing. They are trying to separate us. Izuku immediately thought as he saw some of the students left on the other side of the aura. He could still easily flee from the area which was getting covered, but should he? He turned his head swiftly to where the teachers, a realization hitting him. They are separating the students with teachers. He thought inwardly with the sight of Aizawa and 13 left outside the aura. So he came to the conclusion that he will stuck with students. and the unknown swallowed them. Izuku opened his eyes and found himself floating, dampness all over his body. He was in the lake. The green-blue water dominated his sight as he inspected around him to determine how deep exactly he was, and whether any of the other students were also in the water. Good thing, he could see the refracted side of the sky a few meters above him when he lifted his head. And no, there was not anybody nearby. Except for that shadowish figure. Accelerating towards him. Izuku did not need a clarification of the figure's details as it got more clear, at least as clear as it can get in the blurry water, to prepare himself to combat. Water pressure was a little bit baffling, however. In the most unaccepted way, something slid around him, enveloping his waist and dragging him upwards swiftly. Izuku was about to tear the thing wrapping him, but fortunately recognized it as a certain someone's tongue. Following the tongue, he saw Tsuyu swimming upwards effortlessly. He slammed into the deck, the other student yelping with his impact. He groaned as he rubbed the back of his head, and Tsuyu murmured and apologized, which he declined with his gesture. "Where are we?" he asked to the other students present, Mineta and Tsuyu. It seemed like they were parted into groups after the purple quirk enveloped them. His wet clothes clinged into him annoyingly, only driving him a little more frustrated and enraged. "We are still in USJ, just different areas," Tsuyu answered, her long finger on his chin. "The situation seems like everything was planned by the villains, but it looks like they do not know us specifically, at least not our quirks. They would have sent you to Fire area, if they knew." Izuku completed her sentence, Mineta turning his gaze back and forth between them, completely lost. "So what are we going to do?" he whined. "They will sink the boat." "Alright," Izuku thought as he got closer to railings. Including the dark figure he saw, there were at least 10 people, all of their quirks seemed to be matched with the water. The scoffs graved on their face, and the way their eyes pierced through them as they waited for the slowly sinking boat, they were like the predators waiting for their prey. It was an annoying comparison for Izuku, which awakened mingled urges inside him. He was going to show them who was in the top of the food chain. "Well, I am sure we can come up with a plan, cooperating with our quirks. Maybe we can." Tsuyu's words were interrupted by Izuku's sudden movement to jump on the railings. "What were you doing?" the short boy pleaded. Izuku did not divert his eyes from the shark-like person in the lake. He was also looking at him, challenging him. "I'll beat them up," he answered, and counter-protests followed his statement. "Are you out of your mind? We have to make a plan, Karo." Did the shark-like just lick his tooth? Izuku loved the way his pleased face turned into a horrified one as he dived directly into him, and he was even more enamored of how his fist had collided with his face, as they splashed into the water. So noses and eyes were really the weak spots of sharks. He thought, once again in the water, surrounded with way more figures this time. Desgoons and thugs. He repeated to himself and dodged one of them swimming into him. Water pressure was slowing down his movements and reducing the effectiveness of his punches and kicks, however refracted light was on his side. He had no hesitate to consume more power. "There's no grazing people," he noted to himself as he landed a kick to one of the guy's chin. "No causing any kind of bleeding. Get a hold of yourself." Someone bit him on his arm, blood swiftly mingling with water and surrounding all around him. He did not even want to imagine what would this do if it was not his own blood. He got out his head from the water when he was finished, a circle of red around him. Mineta seemed like he was about to pass out seeing him like this from the boat, and next to him, Tsuyu seemed like he was about to jump after Izuku. "I am alright." He tried to reassure them. The stained droplets dripping to the ground and painting the deck red were not really in accordance with his words. Mineta jumped around him, inspecting his body and screaming with no visible harm. "You should have waited for us too." Tsuyu scolded him. "Why?" Izuku blurted out unacceptedly. This was way more fast and sufficient after all, was not it? He demanded with a stern face, much to Tsuyu's surprise. She searched for an answer by also inspecting Izuku's stained but unscratched body. The two of them were struck with the same question suddenly as they looked directly at Izuku's face. He knew that look. "I did not kill anyone," he protested hastily. "We just should get them out of the water so they will not drown. They are just out of cold," he insisted, something suddenly making it difficult to swallow. "Don't look at me like the demon you are." The adrenaline left its place to overwhelming guilt again. "But I saved them. I saved 2 people. I will proceed. Let's find others." "Nai-chan." His head throbbed with thoughts, squeezing his hand until his knuckles whitened. Fortunately, Mineta v. Tsuyu was pretty busy with the sight in front of them. They could not realize Izuku's bleached face. His head was killing him. He should have been where Aizawa was. With no unbroken bone and no unbleeding vein. He should have been the one who the Noma crushed, his Nai-chan devastated. Izuku could take them all, they could not. Save 2 person. Really. He had not achieved anything at all. So disenchanting, that feeling was destroying him. He was back where he already was, he was still there, no progress. Why? Why was not he jumping to the scene from where they were hiding? What was the feeling that throbbed on his scalp to the point where he could not even lift his gaze? Was it the Nomu? Izuku knew he was so appalled at them. Was it seeing his Nai-chan again? After that incident, which he had tried to kill the only one cared for him back then. Would he be the Nomu next to his Nai-chan if that event had never happened? He hated this conundrum. There was no solution which he could pay with his suffering. He did not need to take action. The man with white messy hair and a hand grabbing him on his face, leaving only his crimson eyes and scratch marks under them visible, strode over where they were hiding. Shigaraki Tamar. His brother. Used to be. He was still the same, how Izuku remembered. But Izuku was not the same, he realized, when his Nai-chan did not even turn to him. Maybe it was the mask and clothes. Or do you hate me? Izuku snapped back into his senses when Shigaraki reached out to Tsuyu's frozen figure, directly to her face. Okay. They don't know. Izuku never recalled a time his Nai-chan's court targeting him this way, when he had pushed Tsuyu away and their crimson and emerald eyes met through Shigaraki's fingers over Izuku's face. The continuous and devastating throb inside his head exploded with the physical pain of decay on his face. Do you really hate me, by any chance? Notes. Well, it was pretty obvious that Shigaraki was the Nai-chan, but you should still reveal it officially anyway. So act surprised, I am pretty excited to write the other chapter, like really, who does not like a good angst? I was considering to make a bonus chapter about what Izuku and his mother did, as I mentioned in the beginning of the chapter. What do you guys think? Chapter 10. Kamisato. Notes. I actually had a lot to do, but anger has shut my mind off, so it has to wait. See the end of the chapter for more notes. He had to retreat. That quirk, decay, was enough to turn one to a dust with the slightest interaction. Although he could regenerate, prolonged Shigaraki's fatal touch could beat him. That's a chance, he was not planning on testing it though. Another problem was rising that point, he could not retreat. His brain, which was to command his appendages, was not clearly in cooperation, presumably the effect that was causing him to tremble to the point, the disquieting shivers to run down his spine, all his body, leaving him to a numbness. He was getting numb. His breath hitched on his throat, oh his throat. He was suffocating. What were these demons tingling under his skin? This blank cold descending inside him. Nai-chan pulled back his hand. The systems broke, he collided with ground, not even hovering on his knees a minute. The sudden impact caused the thought to rise and shine from the shadows of the physical pain, and probably that thought was the reason of all of these reactions to emerge. He tried to kill me. It was not exactly blacking out, not that he could, it was shock, perhaps. All might was surpassing his limits again, as it was accepted from the number 1, the symbol of peace. The probability of him being late even for the littlest second was lingering over the back of his mind, as he and the student who has come to inform about the situation made their way to USJ. The smiling and fearless mimics of his covered all of them. He was late. The cover fell and there was no smile anymore, just the reality of a student trembling on his own blood, face down, so that he was not sure his identity. Another 2 students caught his gaze then, pleading over their fallen friend, dead for sure. Dead for sure. The sight expanded then, the chaos all over the place, as all was beaten figure in one side, the remaining students trying to fight for their lives in other side. The only smiling face, the smile which was barely could be seen under a hand grabbing his face, and other hands covering his whole body, approached him with a sarcastic amusement. The symbol of peace was no chicken. The villain stepped 1 forward, in which he answered with 3, with every step, the smoke of his body getting buffier, and the exasperation which he did not even try to cover coming out. "Tsuyu, Mineta," he demanded. The faces turned to him and lit up with relief, just a little. They turned back to the heavily injured friend of theirs, and the relief did not mean anything at all. "Take him to medics, we have come," he said, wanting to continue with an apology for being late, or a signal of hope. The sight of the body getting lifted by 2 of them and revealing the broken face of the boy, he swallowed every word. His emerald eyes, which have lost their light, was turning to dust gradually with the rest of his face. But there was enough time to 1 single drop of tear to roll down his bloody and cracked cheeks, before the last sign of his dull eyes decaying. Young Midoriya. He tried to kill me. He wanted his brain to shut him up once more. He tried to kill me. Was he swinging in air? What was this pressure on his arms? He tried to kill me. It was clear that his legs were free though. He tried to. I know. He screamed, but he did not at where or by what, and a second later, he was not sure if he had really screamed, even. That's not the point now, my body, something is off. He said a thought or imagined himself saying, he really was not sure. Let's die together. It was like a hum, rocking a baby to sleep, in the utmost innocent way to indicate suicide. This is not suicide. Could the voice read his mind? Did he have a mind? There was no physical existence in him, he was inside his mind, maybe. This is our execution. Nai-chan was our executioner. See how easy and justified it is. Sometimes the questions and answers are clear and actually is easy to say, they are short and lined. But you do not want to talk about it anyways, and you cannot exactly reason why either. The words stuck on your lips or in your mind. They're the words, but the words don't come out. So you dodge it to the point where it can be. It was this kind of a conversation for Izuku, so he tried to flee, dodge it by turning back to physical pain. He opened his eyes. At least, he did the process in which normally conclude with the movement of opening one's eyelids. But it was pitch black. It took him a solid 1 minute to realize that his eyes were destroyed. How much time has passed? Why have not I recovered? The bits of pain ached on his face, like little insects eating his flesh bit by bit. It is decay, the realization slapped him. Shigaraki's quirk has not worn off. A shot of pain struck him in his face, in a way and spot that it was like deja vu. He was not regenerating fully because he was still decaying. He has not turned into dust completely because he was regenerating. Every cell he recovers and recreates was getting devastated by decay, and before decaying would spread, new cells have been already completed. What was left for him from this paradox was perpetual agony. He grimaced as the circles started again. Shadow, he barely could whisper the word, pretty aware of the fact that every second passing by was a threat to him, owing to the fact that he was losing blood and getting even hungrier. Ultimately, he will not be fast enough to catch up with decaying. He needed power to break the chain. The owners of the pressure in his arms, presumably Mineta and Sayu, wavered in tracks with his words. Izuku could feel their grip on him was shaking by his ghosted words. Although he could not see them, there was no smell of blood around other than his, which meant they were ungrazed. He assumed that they were just appalled and crying. Better than none. He tried to repeat again in order to persuade them. He only could grunt, the circles starting again, more swiftly against him. Come on. Izuku tried to rip off from their grip then, trying to adjust his weight to his dangling legs. Neither Tusu nor Mineta was accepting such a movement from him, it seemed, because he was free from the pressures on his arms. And from his legs, he was definitely falling. The familiar sticky tongue wrapped him on his waist. Her barely heard other two arguing hastily about something. A few moments later, he was getting dragged into somewhere. Don't flee. It was that voice again. Done, it is about to get done. Don't resist. He did not want to die. Traitor. He felt tears welling up, whether he was in a physical state or not, the tears were there, somewhere. You have sworn that you'll free us. Why? Why? Pressure, he was feeling pressured. Overwhelmed, guilty, like a kid getting yelled completely out of blue from their parents. We want a single night without a ghost in the walls. What does it even mean, he thought helplessly. We want to be comfortable just once. Why are you preventing us from the promised treasure of stableness? I am not. He tried to soothe them, an unaccepted emotion of sympathy filling him. They deserve freedom. They thoughts rolled up from his mind smoothly, completing the pieces. No, we. All pieces were intertwined, and the big picture was just there, for him to see, as he declared his words. It's not the time. Yes, it is not. He blurted out. Strands, they're still holding us back, dragging us down. We will not be in peace if it ends here. The voice remained silent. We can still save more. He reiterated enthusiastically. We can still save. Like a hero. It was his turn to remain silent. A hero that saves everyone with a smile on his face. No, don't even think about it. He demanded coldly, breaking his frozen state. We are just here too, as you have said. The voice did not care. The laughter filled his mind. The kid's laughter, not with sarcasm or any other meaning. Just hope and enthusiasm. He opened his eyes again, and it was not pitch black this time. The blurry vision of the blue sky above him was like a fresh air to him, pulling him back to physical reality. He blinked a few times, his eyelids protesting and his iris stung with raw air, but he insisted. He was finally recovered. The soreness and tautness on his body relaxed while he exhaled deeply. He rapidly got up from where he was laying, noticing that he was one of the back streets of an area, the tall buildings preventing sunlight. And there they were, Mineta and Sayu, crouching to a wall with their pleated face piercing through him with confusion. He started awkwardly and the blood painting his collar and cheeks were not helping either. Should help others. No need, heroes have come. Sayu answered. But are you sure that you are? Yes, thank you. He blurted. For bringing me Urtoa's shadow, really. They walked to the medics and where other heroes were. Maybe he could have tried to explain things better to them, and he would, if his mind was not so engaged with how to accelerate his suicide plan. Nevertheless, in the wake of the USJ incident, the UA was whispering about an immortal boy in Class 1A. Notes. Hope you did not think we are ending it here. We still have more angst, more Jitsawa concept, support of Class 1A and our beloved Izuku's past. Yes sir, I am pretty excited about the epilogue which I have been forming in my mind for months. Thanks everyone for their kudos and comments, they really make my day. See you soon. Chapter 11. Car Radio. Notes. It has been a while, right? Especially after stating that I will be updating more since it is summer. But hey, it seems like I will not have any breaks for like 2 years ahead me. And also I was busy writing another angsty birthday fic for Deku, you may also check it if you want. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Unprecedented feelings were blooming inside Izuku every day, along with the huge changes in his life since he had fled from sensei. Social anxiety was probably one of these feelings, and it was not welcomed. He had coped since the beginning of the school, not in the spotlight, watching others socializing and befriending with each other from far away. Was it just him? But how could it be that easy to find a friend group in such a different area with complete strangers? It was not like he wanted to make friends or else, of course, since he was a dead man alive. However, another unprecedented feeling was taking its toll on him, biting and eating him alive with faint voices, as he would turn his head to other side while people gathered in bricks. He knew that feeling though, named envy. And now, a group of friends were in front of him. Because of his rising reputation as the Immortal student. Dude, are the rumors true? The boy with his spiky red hair stretching upwards, inquired Izuku enthusiastically. It was the end of the school time, and Izuku was hurrying his way back to home, until he was covered by some intrigued faces of his classmates. Kirishima, Siro, Kaminari and Ashido, he checked their names in his mind. Depends. He answered, suddenly his throat dry. That you cannot die from physical damage and would regenerate swiftly. Also, that you have snake hair and a gaze to petrify people. Kaminari added, receiving a friendly hit on his head by Ashido, along with the lines, "It's Medusa, dummy." Yeah, that's true, he muttered. Definitely not the second one though. Wait, there's also other rumors. Siro started but cut himself with another sentence. They are pretty aggravated though. Izuku could see them weighing the possible truths in the rumors with their glances on his pale patched skin, fangs, nails and all. A discording urge to endear himself to the popular ones filled inside him, as if he was inferior. But you know, Kirishima trailed off, scratching his neck's back. We also heard about the things happened to you in USJ Incident and we are glad that you are fine, man. And there was another unprecedented feeling inside him, but this was warm. Also, you know that you are literally undefeatable, right? Kaminari cheered up as he accidentally pointed at Izuku. Undefeatable. Izuku knew that it was not even close to the truth, owing to the facts that he was weak under sunlight, had to consume blood and flesh to keep his energy and the existence of sensei himself. However, he was pretty undefeatable in the terms of normal human capacities, and this was a good excuse to throw himself to the harm as much as he wanted. Yes, I know. He was constantly pushed to social interaction, and to more troubling events of UA. First, the UA's decision to place everybody to the dorms. Izuku was not sure of the conduct behind this action, but he had a wild guess that it was related to the attack in the USJ. Second was that organization called the Sport Festival. Everybody had seemed pretty excited after the announcement of the event, and Izuku had a hard time to not reveal that he had no idea what that was. Moving to the dorms had been easy to Izuku, he had not much move in any ways. But separating from his mother was a little harder, consisting tears and hugs. However, maybe it was for the best, Izuku had thought. The hardest part was after that point. Living with his peers as a bunch of adolescents. Dinners were especially tough. He could not bear to the noises of forks and plates, accompanied by chatting voices and awkward smell, which was supposed to be delicious, while he was enclosed in the darkness of his room, hugging his knees. At nights, occasionally he'd cry. That was not subject though. While days passed in the dorms, he also gained a better understanding about the sport festival. Everybody clearly trained hard for the upcoming event, which almost caused him to feel guilty. Yes, he was not getting prepared or anything. He had no plan for a kind of hero career, so it was not important. Also, he'd rather keep his energy because finding meals was even more baffling in the dorms. And the days passed by like that. In the blink of an eye, the sport festival was in the wake of tomorrow. The crowd's overwhelming cheers roared throughout the stadium as Izuku nervously fiddled with his fingers. The opening ceremony had passed in a blur, and the first competition has been revealed. Obstacle running. Now, all the students had gathered in a small tunnel, opening to the running track. Izuku could not ask for anything other than some personal space. Therefore, when the bang noise of the starting chute was heard and all the students hurried to usher out, Izuku was hoping for a little jogging. The first 10 minutes passed by like that. He observed other students in the behind like him. Some have already given up, and some was trying to come up with tactics, while it was clear that they had a chasm between the first coming students and the extent of Quirk wise. Izuku cringed by the realization of how unfair the festival was, clearly against the students from classes other than the hero program. So when Somian nudged him on his shoulder, he decided to be helpful, hoping that it was not a student who actually had the guts to come up to him about the rumors among the other ones who just disturbingly sent suspicious glares. You know the time. The question that could be considered awkward in the situation was directed to him by a messy purple-haired boy, with also purple eyes and clear eye bags, as if he has not taken a proper sleep today and yesterday. It's he answered as he scanned the stadium for a clock or anything. He never learned what the time was. Instead, there was the cheers of spectators suddenly capturing his ears, and his name on the list of names for the second round, as he gained his consciousness back. Notes. Another familiar face. This was a little shorter, but I am pretty tired. Therefore, there may be a few mistakes, please do not hesitate to point them out. Thanks everybody for your support. Chapter 12. What he doesn't know can't hurt him. Notes. Wow. Hello again after your long break. See the end of the chapter for more notes. He blinked a few times to adjust to the sudden rush of voices and consciousness engulfing him, while his mind panicked with instinct. However, everything seemed pretty normal besides for him. The time was sliding exactly normal to others. Additionally, he has passed to the second tour, which was definitely not his conduct. He barely heard the announcement of the first round's winners, Kazuki Bakugo in the first, and Todoroki Shoto hot behind his heels as he inspected the crowd. He inspected the crowd to hopefully see the last image lingering over his mind, a mop of purple head. And he found what he sought for, nudging him slightly on his shoulder to draw his attention. The boy seemed startled with such a simple gesture, vouching his guilt regarding whatever just happened. The catch was not the time, Izuku decided to start with a friendly considerable statement, hoping to ease the boy's thought. But when he opened his mouth to speak, Izuku rapidly shut him out, remembering the last time. The boy seemed even more shocked that he let himself silenced. Just do not do it again, Izuku said, hovering his pointing finger in front of the boy's lips. I just want to know what that quirk was. He hastily added. It is your quirk, right? The boy glared him sharply and Izuku narrowed his eyebrows. Why would I tell you? The purple-haired boy's voice was slow and effective. Izuku held his breath, waiting for the same effect as before, and exhaled with the realization of the fact that he was still in control of himself. I mean, you used it on me. Izuku replied, not letting his guard down, since he was still yet to have a clue about how the quirk of his worked. And I am merely intrigued. The boy's purple and narrowed eyes scanned Izuku, as if he was trying to decide his next move. You should be thanking. He changed the subject instead, a scoff placing on his face. You were not to even pass the round with that pace. Izuku chose to not answer. The boy should have felt pressure to continue against Izuku's silence that he continued, shrugging. Therefore I used you and some other to pass the first round. Using quirks is expected after all, right? Izuku nodded in understanding. And how that quirk of yours work? Just when Izuku assumed that he was breaking out of his shell, the boy seemed bothered by the question. Then a snort took over his face, as he retorted. Oh, you are so curious about a non-heroic and demonish quirk. Demonish. Mind manipulation. I can control people when they answer me. He gave in, sighing. That's demonish. Izuku could not help but emphasize. As if it was not in the list of things the boy was expecting to hear, he was surprised with Izuku's low-key outburst. Not suitable for a hero. People don't like it when they're controlled out of their will. The boy elaborated. It makes them uneasy around me and scares them off. Izuku realized how tense and sorrowed the boy's voice sounded. Then I am telling you, that's not demonish or whatever. He spoke with a rise in his voice. As a person who literally has a demon quirk, he admitted, pointing his thumbs towards himself, trying to act confident. Izuku was not enamored with declaring his state to others, however. He felt empathy towards the boy. The boy seemed taken aback with his words, inspecting Izuku carefully. Before he could say anything, Izuku continued, why don't we team up? What? Izuku pointed the big screen behind him, now flashing with the announcement of the next tour. Calvary battle. You can be at the top and I will be in the right front. As for other positions, your quirk can help us, if you are in favor. The purple-headed boy seemed contemplating the idea before a smirk curved his lips. Shinsu Hitachi. He introduced himself, reaching out his hand. Midoriya Izuku. He shook Hitashi's hand. Okay, since probably everyone will be after Bakugo and the 10,000 point, it'll be easier for us to obtain small amounts of points. Until they pile up enough to get us to the next tour. Shinsu reiterated their plan as they tried to get comfortable in their Calvary position. Got it. Izuku answered from the front. He glanced the other students forming their form that Shinsu used his quirk on. Izuku remembered their names from class. It did not matter though, Izuku believed he and Shinsu would be enough. He glanced around the area for the last time, especially the jackpot with 10,000 points. The ambition filling the air was thick enough that Izuku felt like he could grab and feel it on his hands. Maybe that was why his heart would not stop drumming in his chest. Shinsu had to give it to the boy, he was a monster. By the second the Calvary battle has begun, he has been sprinting to every corner. Shinsu was giving his best to not fall off and collecting minor points as they planned. And he seemed like he was having the time of his life too. Shinsu just could not believe that this boy was just jogging in the first round. How much did we get? Izuku yelled as he dodged another attack, his question somehow sounding like laughter. We just need 50 points more. Shinsu was suddenly interrupted by the sudden explosion near to his ear, and Izuku was suddenly alarmed, getting out of his cheerful state just in a second as he confronted the enemy. Bakugo Katsuki. He was weirdly obsessed with their team in this round, if you asked Shinsu. I got this, Shinsu yelled from above to mainly his partner, who seemed very triggered by the infamous Bakugo Katsuki. But Izuku had already sprinted forward, his clawed hand taut as he reached to the lower points Bakugo had. Shinsu was sure this guy was out of his mind. The heck are you doing? Shinsu could clearly see that Bakugo was attacking, and this idiot had his eyes only on the points, instead of shielding himself. The explosion was intense, and Shinsu quickly rode their team away from Bakugo, while trying to see Izuku's condition through the smoke caused by the explosion. Here, how much is it? Izuku shoved the headband to Shinsu. They had retreated to a safer corner, and Izuku had barely catched his breath. He coughed several times as Shinsu stared to the point Izuku was holding, his hand still hovering in the air, because Shinsu did not take it. Izuku looked at him with anticipation, and Shinsu could clearly see Izuku's arm, which was the victim of the blow. For just 5 points. What do you think you are doing? Shinsu scolded instead. Izuku seemed surprised by his outburst. What? Our team consists of 5 people for a reason, Shinsu uttered. Izuku barely glanced the other students in their team, with no interest at all, and he turned to his gaze to see how much time was left. Don't you think I am holding up just fine? He asked, growing impatient. Your arm is bruising. No, it's not. He spoke back with a monotone tone, as if to warn Shinsu to not dig up further. As he said, his arm seemed completely fine, but Shinsu could clearly remember its condition just seconds before, and the smoke still lingering on his clothes. Not even counting how Izuku's fingers were shaking slightly. Shinsu was buying none of it. No, I am in the top of this Calvary and you listen to me, Shinsu demanded, ready to brainwash Izuku if he persisted any further. Izuku seemed conflicted for a while, however he eventually gave in, his shoulders slumping to his sides. Sorry, he whispered. Shinsu was really concerned. For the first minutes, Izuku was having the time of his life. They could have known that being able to spend his energy so freely in an event with no conduct of harm, an event just for fun, could ease his stress this much. But, it seemed like the little animal he had consumed last night could drive him until here. He was tired. Also, he has been scolded by Shinsu too. With that, he was snapped back to reality. He was not here to have fun, he was here to help Shinsu pass this round. The goal just 45 points away. No big deal. He repeated it in his head as the countdown from 10 began, and he reached towards Todoroki's points. Todoroki's team had the second highest point, which Izuku did not need. That would mean shoving Todoroki's team to bottom while they settled on the second. No, Izuku had no intention to take anybody's opportunity to pass. They only needed 45 points. One should know how to act humble, right? The problem is, all of the headbands were reversed, and it could not be seen which was the highest one. But, Izuku had been carefully stealing glances to them from the start, so he knew. The third one from the bottom, it's the highest one. Don't take it. Don't take it. He reiterated in his head as he reached for the one in the bottom of it, acting rapid enough to give no time to Todoroki and his team to react. Shinsu had already someone of their team brainwashed, and that slowed them down too. Yeah, teamwork. Probably the biggest trump card was the fact that Todoroki was freezing. His movements were heavy and easy to predict. Todoroki's behavior had bothered Izuku before, he could see the duality in the multicolored eyes of his. He definitely should not steal Todoroki's opportunity to pass. Last 3 seconds. The voice rumbled throughout the area. Okay, we made it, Izuku thought as his fingers catched the headband. Turns out they had underestimated Todoroki. The sudden feeling of hot instead of the familiar cold aura Todoroki has triggered the instincts of Izuku, however he had no time to react. Todoroki swung his ablazed arm and all Izuku could do was to hold on to the headband with his life, as he was pushed to the ground. Now he gasped as he internally cringed to the fact that he was getting burned again and again, and he hit the ground with the declaration that the battle was over. Shinsu quickly ran to his side, checking if he was okay, and he showed him the headband, smiling slightly. All the burns were surely worth if it meant getting Shinsu smiling like that, Izuku decided. A hero that saves everyone with a smile on his face. He turned to head back to himself to admire their work as he got up and sat. That was not 45 points. That was the second highest point in the game. At the big screen, he watched as their team rose to the second place, and Todoroki sank to the oblivion. Izuku groaned as he slumped back to the ground. Notes. Hope you liked it. I want to thank everybody who patiently waits for the upcoming chapters. Really. It makes me really emotional. I recently watched the third film. I remembered how much I love deku. I remembered there are people waiting for me. So here it is. At last. New chapter when? Who knows? I have university exams coming up. Chapter 13. Emergency contact. Notes. Me, realizing that I forgot what I have written so far. Oh shit, Lumao. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Izuku knew how hatred displayed on one's face. I hate you. The demon screamed from the top of his lungs. Barely standing out of adrenaline, blood scattered around him, Izuku called out to the one behind all of his torture. The man stood still, a taunting smile curving his lips, looking at the creature he made, with fascination. Izuku hated being the lab rat. "I will destroy you," he yelled, taking one more step towards the man, keeping the body of a dead human Eninamu out of his sight. The metallic taste of blood in his mouth, the aching body of his, and the hatred towards the man. He was blinded. Maybe if he could see, he would notice this was exactly how Sensei wanted Izuku to turn into. A demon only triggered by his bloodlust, easy to manipulate, the perfect tool. "You can't beat me, you know. Why are you still striding towards me?" Sensei asked playfully. "So what?" Izuku jumped ahead, Sensei dodging him, hands on pockets. "I'll eliminate you no matter what." "Good," Sensei muttered. Suddenly catching Izuku and keeping his aggressive claws away from himself, he leaned in to get a clear look of Izuku's eyes. "You are not afraid of the consequences anymore. And you completely forgot." He smirked. Now Izuku. That's right. When you fight, you don't need to hold back. At all." He whispered, slowly patting Izuku's curls as Izuku shook out of anger under his grip. "You don't need to worry about injuries, you don't need to have a good motive, you do not have to be afraid of death. Because nobody can kill you." Suddenly his fingers slipped to Izuku's neck, enveloping it as Izuku's eyes widened with recognition and horror. "Because nobody can kill you. Except for me." "Excuse me." Izuku suddenly interfered between Todoroki and Endeavor. They both turned to him, Endeavor clearly annoyed that his heated argument with his son was disrupted. And well, Todoroki's face was the same Izuku once had. Maybe that was why he felt the must to interfere. "We're busy," Endeavor answered harshly, and Todoroki sucked a shaky breath. "The Calvary girl requests Todoroki," Izuku said. Seeing Endeavor hesitate, Izuku decided to push further. "It is probably urgent since the next stage is about to start." Endeavor scoffed when he heard the words next stage, but he let go, telling Todoroki that the conversation is not over. When Endeavor was out of the sight, Todoroki turned to Izuku expecting him to lead the way, but found him crouched down in the corner. "Man, he sure is intimidating." Izuku mumbled and Todoroki gave him a puzzled look. "Oh, no, recovery girl is not calling for you." Izuku elaborated and Todoroki's confusion deepened. "You did not seem comfortable. Though, this only can postpone the problem. I don't know what the deal is, but maybe you should talk to a teacher." Izuku said from the corner he is sitting, leaning to the wall further as he realized how tired he actually was. Todoroki remained silent for a while, and Izuku used this time to close his eyelids and get some rest, as much as he could, at least. "You went through something similar, didn't you?" Izuku's eyes shot open and turned his head towards Todoroki. His face was traced with curiosity and empathy. "Oh hell no. I don't know what you are talking about," Izuku answered monotonely as he got up and prepared to excuse himself to leave, or his cover could blow up, much to his displeasure. "The salve you gave me was also a clue. You are probably used to patch yourself up," Todoroki said, crossing his arms on his chest. "I told you, it wasn't mine." Izuku talked back, fully facing Todoroki now. "Also everybody could see that you were about to lash out of anger back there. I did what everybody would do." Todoroki pursued his lips, clearly not convinced. But he seemed to drop the subject for now and for Izuku it was enough. So he turned to leave. "Don't you have to go to the third round?" "I dropped out," Izuku uttered, not ceasing to walk away. "Why?" Todoroki asked back. Izuku came to a halt just as he was about to turn the corner. He slightly bent his head towards Todoroki. Izuku decided to play along. "A familiar reason why you never use your fireside." He smirked. Waving his hand, he left. It was expected for Shinsu to lose in the first match of the third stage, really. Hand to hero program students. No chance. Before he could even speak, he was put out of the stage. It couldn't be helped. Sometimes, no matter how much you work hard, you are destined to be dusted by another, blessed by something they were born with. Not sometimes, most of the time. While passing to the third stage, some of the students had dropped out. The ones Shinsu and Midoriya had used in the Calvary battle, more precisely. Shinsu could feel bad for it, of course, but using quirks were what they were expected to do. It was their decision to play the honest one and choose to not continue a race they didn't put work for. At least this was the excuse he used to soothe himself. But what confused him was Midoriya's behavior. He was among the ones who chose to drop out. Shinsu couldn't understand what his intention was. Midoriya clearly had played a big role to win the second round. So why would he retreat? When Shinsu had looked him confused, he had mouthed tired and smiled slightly before leaving the stadium. Normally, Shinsu would be pissed of seeing yet another hero student with a blessed quirk, acting arrogant enough to not see how advantaged they are compared to some others. But something about Midoriya was off. Shinsu could not quite put his finger on it, however he could not say he was not curious. Especially when he also did not show up during the third stage in the awards ceremony. Unknown to Shinsu, there was another student absent, devastated by horrible news no little brother would want to receive. Notes. Big props to my precious readers, for their patience. Really man, I just can't. But I have my excuses. I am working my arse off, sorry. University exams coming up. God, I am so ready to leave high school. Sorry for possible mistakes in writing. I don't really proofread, but I plan to. Till that, it is on you to correct me, boys. Love, love, love.